Chapter 1. Roar! An earth-shattering tiger's roar resounded in the desolate ancient mountain range. It was not hard to hear that the tiger's roar contained a trace of fatigue, as well as a deep sense of joy. This was an incomparably huge mountain range that stretched for no less than 10,000 miles. All around, all kinds of tall ancient trees could be seen everywhere. One after another, they soared into the sky. The branches and leaves were quite dense, blocking the sunlight above. Birds of all sizes stood on the treetops, chirping and chirping in a clear and melodious manner. The scenery was similar to a primeval forest that no one had ever set foot in. In the forest, there were many animals, all following the law of the forest, living here generation after generation. Since ancient times, people had called this place the Tiger Hill mountain range. When the tiger's roar rang out, they could feel the natural domineering aura of the tiger's roar, as well as the heavy presence of deterrence. Immediately, all the beasts within 100 kilometers fled into the distance in fright. This was the natural fear they had for the king of beasts. Looking at the location where the tiger's roar came from. At the foot of a mountain there was a natural cave. At the entrance of the cave, there were dense weeds used to cover the existence of the cave. If one was not careful, very few people would notice that there was a cave behind the weeds. From this, it could be seen that this place was quite hidden. Looking at the cave was not deep, only about 10 meters or so. The entrance was not big, but the inside of the cave was very wide, like a conference hall that occupied more than 10 meters. At the end of the cave, there was a white tiger that did not have many colors lying on its body. This tiger's body was quite large, close to 2 meters, and on its forehead, there was the word king formed by stripes. There was a kind of intimidating aura on its body, which was the aura of a king of beasts. The tiger's roar just now came from its mouth. After the tiger's roar, the white tiger turned its head and looked down, its tiger eyes showing a kind of human-like kindness. Roar! Roar! Pata! Pata! Below it, there were 3 newborn tiger cubs that had not yet opened their eyes. These tiger cubs were like puppies just now, letting out roar sounds from their mouth. Their 4 little legs were everywhere, and their heads were in front of the white tiger's stomach, opening their small mouths and instinctively sucking. It turned out that this was a female tiger that had just given birth to a tiger cub. Among the 3 tiger cubs, one of them was a little white tiger like its mother. There weren't many other colors on its body, and the other one was a colorful little tiger with tiger stripes on its body. The last one was a black tiger with a purple stripe on its forehead that formed a small king character. The other 2 tiger cubs were lying under the white tiger, sucking its milk. But strangely, the black tiger was a little different. Its eyes were open, and there was a strange rich color in its eyes. Pain, coldness, surprise, and a trace of bewilderment. No one would have thought that a newborn tiger cub would have such rich emotions in its eyes. It didn't look like the eyes of a newborn at all. Why didn't I die? Why did I become a tiger? Could it be that all of this is the heavens playing tricks on me? Sakra shouted blankly in his heart. He didn't understand why he didn't die when he was shot in the heart. It was fine if he didn't die, but what he couldn't accept the most was that he had turned into a newborn tiger cub. If he hadn't experienced it himself, he wouldn't have believed it no matter what. Even more so, he couldn't accept that he had turned from a human into a beast. Even if this body was the king of beasts. Looking at the mighty white tiger in front of him, and the 2 tiger cubs that were sucking its milk with relish, no, it should be said that they were his 2 brothers now, a sorrowful feeling welled up in his heart. D. Shirtian was determined to be the next successor of the D family, one of the 4 major families in Huaxia, from the moment he was born. It could be said that he was doted on by everyone and was destined to be favored by God. And he didn't disappoint. He was born with a photographic memory and learned everything quickly, especially in business. He had unparalleled talent. At the age of 14, he left his family, and with only 10,000 yuan in capital, he ventured in the stock market for a year. When he left, his capital had reached 10 million yuan. At the age of 15, he founded his first company. With his keen eyes, he got involved in a series of internet industries. In 3 years, he had billions of yuan in asset. At the age of 18, his company had developed into various industries, such as real estate, food, clothing, film, and other aspects. He was involved in everything that could make money. The size of the industrial cluster and the amount of assets he had were immeasurable. He also received a lot of attention from his family. Inheriting the position of the head of the family could be said to be a sure thing. Unfortunately, when Di Shirtian was born, his mother was weak after giving birth and passed away before he was 1 year old. 3 years later, his father married Nangong Xin from the Nangong family, which was also one of the 4 major families. The next year, she gave birth to a younger brother for Di Shirtian. There had always been a rule in the aristocratic families that passed on the eldest son and not the youngest son. Since he was the eldest son in the family, if there were no accidents, the position of the head of the family would definitely fall on Di Shirtian. If Nangong Xin didn't give birth to a child, everything would be fine. But now that she had given birth to a boy, the matter of fighting for the position of the head of the family appeared without any reason. Nangong Xin, Di Qintian, to think that I've always treated you like my biological mother and brother. I valued the kinship between us, but this is how you repay me. Sakra's eyes were full of desolation and indifference. Originally, he had been working hard in the sea of business, so he had seen the snobbish faces of society, as well as all kinds of conspiracies and tricks, hypocrisy of the world, and so on. However, business was business. He didn't want to become like other businessmen who only cared about profit. For profit, he could give up the people he was with. Therefore, he had always kept a trace of warmth in his heart. That touch of kinship, he hoped that when he was tired outside, he could feel the warmth of kinship. However, he was wrong. In the face of profit, kinship was actually so fragile. Roar! Just as Di Shirtian was immersed in his painful memories, the white tiger mother saw that the little black tiger was alone at the side and didn't come over to suck milk. She let out a low roar and stretched her head over. She opened her tiger mouth and carefully held the weak little Di Shirtian in her mouth. Then, she put him down. Boss, you were born first. You can't be naughty. Hurry up and drink milk. Grow up and become strong. The white tiger mother roared. In human ears, it was a tiger's roar, but in Di Shirtian's ears, it was a sentence that he could completely understand. How can I understand the language of beasts? Di Shirtian was stunned by the words in his ears. However, he immediately understood and felt bitter in his heart. Humans have languages, so do beasts. In the past, I couldn't understand them because I was human. Now that I've become a tiger, of course I can understand them. Raising his eyes to look at White Tiger Mother who was looking at him, he could clearly see a kind of strong maternal love from White Tiger's eyes. This made Di Shirtian's originally ice-cold state of mind seem to have a string fiercely plucked. Turning its head, it opened its mouth and gently sucked the meat. The white tiger was very strong, and the meat in its body was also quite abundant. With a gentle suck, the sweet meat immediately entered its mouth and was swallowed into its stomach. A faint warmth circulated in his body, making him feel very comfortable. After a while, his 2 eyes naturally closed, and he lay down under the white tiger mother and fell asleep. Among the tiger species, white tigers were very rare. Similarly, black tigers were also very rare. In the forest, it was often difficult to see them. However, these tigers were all natural variant. Their potential was much stronger than other tigers. If a big multicolored tiger fought with a white tiger or a black tiger when they reached adulthood, there was a 90% chance that the latter would win. Di Shirtian, who had a certain understanding of animals, finally accepted the fact that he had turned into a tiger after staying in the cave for 3 whole months. Ayo! On a small hill next to the cave, a completely black tiger let out a heaven-shaking roar towards the sky. The black tiger wasn't big. After 3 months, due to the abundant milk, it had already grown to the size of an adult wild wolf. Although there was still a trace of childishness in the tiger's roar, the king's aura of the king of beasts had already begun to take shape. Hearing the tiger's roar, many birds in the surroundings spread their wings and flew away. Walala! A gentle breeze blew past, causing the black tiger's fur to sway and wave. The purple king character on the black tiger's forehead became even more profound. However, its eyes were filled with a kind of indifference, and an aura that looked down on all living beings burst forth. Humans are inferior to beasts. Why should I care about becoming a beast? As a beast, I also want to be a king. Di-Shir-Tian looked at the scene in front of him coldly. Looking at the birds that were constantly flying away, a wave of arrogance constantly reverberated in his body. Roar! At this time, at the foot of the mountain, an even more domineering tiger's roar sounded. Following that, 2 more childish cries rang out. When Indra heard this, he turned his head towards the direction where the sound came from and stared for a while. Finally, his 2 powerful hind legs stomped heavily on the ground and his sturdy tiger body steadily leaped out. After landing on the ground, he ran forward at a speed that wasn't fast but was quite steady. Not long after, Di-Shir-Tian ran back to the front of the cave. He saw that the tall tiger mother was playing in front of the cave with her 2 younger brothers and sister. 2 tiger cubs, the white one was the younger sister, and the striped one was the younger brother. The white tiger was born last, so it was the youngest. When the 2 tiger cubs saw Di-Shir-Tian coming back, they immediately clumsily ran towards him and intimately rubbed against him, letting out happy cries. They had already opened their eyes. Although they weren't very nimble when running, they could still run slowly. During this period of time, Di-Shir-Tian also discovered a strange thing. The intelligence of beasts really couldn't be compared to that of humans. When the tiger mother roared, she only expressed some simple meaning, but the 2 younger brothers and sister couldn't express it. Perhaps it was because they hadn't grown up yet. Seeing the intimate actions of his younger brother and sister, Di-Shir-Tian's indifferent eyes slightly showed a trace of gentleness. Looking at the tiger mother who was showing a trace of motherly love, he thought to himself, "It's good to be a tiger. At least it's not as treacherous as those humans." Chapter 2. Pung Pung Pung. At the side of the cave, a small black tiger was standing under a tall, ancient tree. It was constantly using its strength to ram its body against the thick trunk of the tree. Every time it hit the trunk, it would make a loud noise. From the sound, it could be heard that the tiger was not pretending. It was really using its body to ram against the tree. Low growls came out from the little black tiger's mouth, its body constantly trembling. It could be seen that the act of ramming into the tree was not harmless, it was also painful. However, the little black tiger's eyes were filled with a kind of stubbornness and indifference. It gritted its newly grown canine teeth and continued ramming into the tree. From its body one could see a kind of stubbornness, a kind of persistence, a kind of determination that would not give up until it reached its goal. 97, 98, 99, 100. Di-Shir-Tian did not stop even after he finished ramming into the tree. Instead, he turned around, raised his black tiger tail high up, and waved it at the tree again. How could a newborn tiger's body be so strong? When its tail hit the tree, the first thing to be injured was not the tree, but its own tail. Waves of intense pain continuously appeared in its body, but the action of hitting the tree did not stop because of this. Time and time again, it gritted its teeth and persevered, using its stubbornness. Persevere, and persevere, until it hit the 100th time. Hoo! Di-Shir-Tian then heavily exhaled the breath in his chest, his whole body sweating as he collapsed on the ground. That's right, this black tiger was Tirtian. As a human in his previous life, he understood the law of the jungle very well. Although he was a tiger among the kings of beasts in this jungle, even if you were born as the king of beasts, if you did not have the necessary strength, there would be a day when you would be hunted down and eaten by stronger beasts. Becoming a tiger was not wrong. Tirtian was not the kind of person who only knew how to moan and complain. Ever since he accepted this fact, he began to consciously strengthen himself, according to some rough understanding of animals in his previous life. Generally speaking, a tiger's breastfeeding period lasted 3 to 6 months. After 3 months of breastfeeding, Tirtian did not continue to stay in the cave like his other 2 siblings. Instead, he began to consciously train his body. He didn't know any cultivation methods, so all he could think of was to start from the tiger's most fundamental body. Hitting the trees was to temper the flesh and blood in the body, making every inch of the body stronger and more tenacious. Whipping the tail was because the tail was a killer move of the tiger species. Strong. I want to become even stronger. Tirtian's eyes were filled with a firm determination. The conviction to become stronger had taken root in his heart. Why did he die in his previous life? Firstly, it was because he had placed his hopes on his family and lost his vigilance. Secondly, he was bewitched by the false familial love. With the support of his family and his own intelligence, he was able to succeed in the business world. But what about a genius? A small bullet could end his life. In this life, after Tirtian accepted the fact that he had been reborn, he had already made up his mind. In this life, he absolutely could not rely on others. Only when he was strong himself could he be truly strong. Only when he was strong himself could he survive in this dangerous forest. The conviction to become stronger was unprecedentedly strong. After resting for a while, Tirtian stood up with difficulty. Step by step, he walked into the cave. After entering the cave, the Prime Minister was greeted by the tiger mother's gentle gaze. This gaze made his heart tremble. He slowly walked to the tiger mother's body and sucked on the tiger juice. When the tiger juice entered his stomach, a warm feeling spread out from all parts of his body, making him feel so comfortable that he wanted to moan. For some reason, Tirtian always felt that the expression in the tiger mother's eyes seemed to have a human color. No, it should be said that it had a unique spirituality. Lying beside his mother tiger, he would always feel very comfortable and safe. He would unconsciously put down all his vigilance and fall into a deep sleep without any burden. This kind of life, day after day, unknowingly, another 3 months had already passed. In this half-year, Tirtian would hit the nearby trees every day to temper his body. He grew teeth and used his teeth to bite the trees, sharpening the tiger teeth in his mouth. He grew claws and used his claws to constantly scratch the trees. He used every minute to desperately train his skills. Now, his body had already grown to half the height of a human and more than a meter long. He was almost close to the size of an adult tiger. To be able to grow so fast was completely the result of his continuous training. With my current strength, I can try to go out to hunt tomorrow. I can't always stay by the tiger mother's side. After training, Tirtian raised his front claws and looked at them that had grown quite sharp. His eyes revealed a thoughtful look. After this period of training, he already felt that he basically had the ability to survive and hunt alone in the forest. He secretly decided that tomorrow, he would go out to hunt for the first time in his life. After making up his mind, Tirtian quickly stood up. His 4 strong legs began to run non-stop. His speed was very fast, but he didn't immediately return to the cave. Instead, he ran towards a pool that he found not long ago. The pool wasn't far from the cave. It had always been the place where various animals in the forest drank water. After running for a while, passing through the dense forest, his eyes suddenly opened up. Different from the surrounding dense scenery, In front of him was a wide valley. The valley was very flat, and in the deepest part of the valley there was a waterfall falling from the sky. The clear mountain water emitted a faint fragrance, and the rich water vapor gave people a kind of refreshing feeling. Under the waterfall, under the impact of the water flow, it formed a not small pool. At the side of the pool, there were various kinds of animals with their heads lowered to drink water. Ayo! Tion jumped into the valley and let out a roar that shook the sky. At this time, the roar of the tiger had a kind of rich domineering aura, and the power of the tiger was not concealed in the slightest. Meh! Hiss! Under the deterrence of the tiger's might, for a moment, the animals that were quietly drinking water by the pool were frightened and fled in all directions. In the blink of an eye, the originally bustling valley became silent. Looking at the hundreds of animals that fled in all directions, Tian's eyes did not have a trace of fluctuation. Unknowingly, indifference had become the main color in his eyes. Moving his strong body, he came to the side of the pool. After lowering his head to drink a few mouthfuls of water, his body jumped forward without warning and jumped into the water, letting the clear mountain water wash away the fatigue in his body. While swimming in the water, Tian's mind was constantly thinking about some questions that had been in his heart for a long time. Not long after being reborn here, he found that the world he was in seemed to be completely different from the original world. Just in terms of the air, compared to the previous world, it was like the difference between heaven and earth. It was incomparably fresh, and there was not a trace of pollution. The sky was unprecedentedly blue. There was not much damage to the mountains and rivers. Compared to the world in his previous life, there was a considerable contrast. Perhaps this was not the previous world, or perhaps it was possible that he had returned to the ancient times. Tian secretly guessed in his heart, but unfortunately, there was no real thing that could be confirmed, and he still had no way to confirm the guess in his heart. Ayo! At this moment, suddenly, a huge tiger's roar that shook the sky fiercely rushed to the sky. The roar of the tiger was awe-inspiring and incomparably domineering. But when Tian heard it, his eyes fiercely shrank, and in the roar, he heard a kind of anger and a kind of sadness. Not good. Tian's heart trembled, and a strong burst of strength burst out of his body, and fiercely jumped from the water to the shore. He recognized this tiger's roar. It was the white tiger's mother's roar. A mountain cannot have two tigers. This was a proverb that had existed since ancient times. With the white tiger's family here, there were no other tigers in the surrounding 100 miles. Listening to the aura emitted from the roar, he was afraid that something had happened in the cave. After living together for half a year, although he had not said anything, the white tiger's mother's meticulous motherly love made him unable to produce a trace of resistance. Faintly, in his heart, he had already recognized his identity, recognized the white tiger as his mother, and recognized the two brothers and sister beside him. He also regarded himself as a member of this family. Feeling that something had happened at home, Tian's indifferent heart had a kind of anxious feeling for the first time, and used all the strength in his body, desperately running in the direction of the cave. Why? Why would the tiger mother let out such a roar? Is there anyone in this forest who can beat mother? What exactly happened? Running all the way, but his mind was quickly turning. He was very clear about the tiger mother's strength, and the title of the king of beasts was definitely not discounted in the slightest. In this forest, she was definitely the undisputed king. Faster! 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 Tian constantly shouted in his heart, his body as fast as lightning, shuttling back and forth between the trees and vegetation. Schwa! However, just as he was about to reach the cave, his body suddenly stopped. He trembled violently, and his body lay on the ground in a clump of dense weeds. His two eyes stared painfully into the air. In the air, there were actually two people standing there. One was a young man wearing brocade clothes, stepping on a scarlet flying sword under his feet, and the other was a woman wearing a palace dress, with a peerless appearance and a cold face, also stepping on an ice crystal-colored flying sword under her feet, and at the same time holding a net in her hand, a pitch-black net. In the net there were actually 1 big and 2 small, 3 tigers. In the net, the tiger mother seemed to know about the impending doom, and desperately used her body to protect the 2 cubs under her body constantly struggling, biting with her teeth, clawing with her claws, trying to break the net in front of her, but she didn't know what the net was made of. The weapon of the king of beasts was actually useless against it, and couldn't hurt it at all. Roar! The white tiger's mouth let out a roar of anger and sadness. The people who heard it couldn't help but feel compassion. When a new book is uploaded, it is the time when I need support the most. In the past, I rarely asked people for help when I opened a book, because I didn't want to add so many digressions in the book and affect everyone's mood. This time, I'm going all out, and here I beg everyone to recommend more, collect, and drift here, thank you. Chapter 3. Eldest Senior Sister, I didn't expect our luck to be so good this time. We can encounter such a spiritual white tiger as soon as we come out. This time, if we bring it back to the sect and hand it over to the sect for training, we will soon have 3 more spiritual beasts. The sect leader will definitely reward us. Maybe he will even give us a spirit pill. The brocade-robed man looked at the struggling white tiger in the net. Especially when he saw the human-like look in the white tiger's eyes, he couldn't help but say to the cold woman enviously. The cold woman nodded slightly. Looking at the white tiger in front of her, she said, "White tigers have always been very spiritual. This time, if we bring it back to the sect and train it with a unique secret method, it will not take long for it to form an inner core and become a spiritual beast. This time, we've caught 3 in a row. So, the sect will naturally reward Junior Marshall Brother." "Thank you, Senior Sister." When the brocade-robed man heard this, he was overjoyed and quickly thanked her. Let's go. Let's go to other places and see if we can find such spiritual beasts." The young girl didn't seem to do anything, but the large net in the air quickly shrunk and was put into a simple and unadorned pouch at her waist. 2 streams of light streaked across the air. In the blink of an eye, the man and woman disappeared. Roar! A low growl that was deliberately suppressed came out from Sakra's mouth. He crouched in the weeds, using the surrounding dense weeds to cover his figure. However, looking at the direction where the 2 people had just left, his eyes revealed a kind of deep hatred, anger, and deep pain that kept stirring in his heart. Roar! 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 Tion stood up fiercely and roared with anger and hatred. He kept running in the forest like a madman. A deathly aura emerged from his body. Hearing the tiger's roar, the spiritual beasts in the forest were completely shaken. One by one, they fled in panic. One day, an entire day, in the mountain range, the tiger's roar sounded continuously for a day. From the beginning of sadness, desolation, under the incessant roar. In the end, even its voice became hoarse. Even so, the tiger's roar did not stop. On the peak of the mountain, above the waterfall in the valley where Sakra was drinking water, a pitch-black tiger quietly stood on a huge boulder beside the waterfall. It raised its head and looked at the bright full moon above its head. Its body emitted a cold aura, and from time to time, traces of hatred and pain flashed through its cold eyes. Why? Since the heavens don't want me to be a human, even if I become a tiger, I won't feel resentment. At least, I can feel this simple kinship. But why is it that when I'm about to accept this kinship, it has to be cruelly taken away? I hate it, I hate it, I hate it! Tion's eyes flickered with hatred. He hated the unfairness of the heavens and hated the unfairness of the earth. When he was a human, he wanted to work hard to build up a relationship with his family, but in the end, he was fooled by it. At that moment, he started to doubt humanity. As a tiger, He could feel the constant love and care of his mother, White Tiger Mummy. All the motherly love and care poured into their 3 children, making him want to integrate into this family once again. Yet, some of them were being torn apart right before his eyes. At that moment, a deep hatred had already been branded into his body. Immortal cultivators. Shirtian's heart became even colder. The ones who took away White Tiger Mummy and his younger siblings were definitely the legendary immortal cultivators. Ever since he saw the man and woman standing on flying swords and standing in the void, Shirtian understood that those 2 were the immortal cultivators that only appeared in legends. Deeply aware of his own strength, he didn't recklessly rush out. Instead, he chose to hide himself deep in the side. Because he knew that with the strength of those immortal cultivators, even if there were 1,000 of him added together, he definitely wouldn't be a match for them. If he rushed out rashly, he would only give them an extra spoil of war. Immortal cultivators, just you wait. Wait for me. One day I will come and find you. Shirtian secretly made up his mind. Roar! A roar came out of his mouth. At this moment, there was only endless coldness, endless hatred, and endless desolation in his tiger roar. Demon! I must cultivate to become a demon. Shirtian directly lay on the huge boulder below him. Opening his mouth wide, he faced the full moon above his head and inhaled and exhaled in large mouthfuls. That appearance, it was as if he wanted to swallow all the moonlight from the moon into his stomach. Cultivate, I must cultivate to become a demon. As long as I become a demon, I will have the power to rescue White Tiger Mummy and his younger siblings. I must be able to do it. I can cultivate to become a demon. The moment he saw the immortal cultivators, Shirtian had already vaguely guessed that the world he was in now was probably no longer the original one. It was a world of immortal cultivators where immortal cultivators prevailed. Since immortal cultivators could exist, that meant that the legendary demons should also exist. If humans could cultivate to become immortals, why couldn't all living things in this world cultivate to become demons? When he thought about how animals could cultivate to become demons, Shirtian no longer hesitated. Facing the full moon above his head, he began to inhale and exhale continuously. In his previous life, he had read some books. According to some theories, demons were born by absorbing the essence of the sun and the moon. Whether this was true or not, he didn't want to delve into it. As long as there was a glimmer of hope, he had no reason to give up. Facing the full moon, he continued to inhale and exhale, huff, inhale. Time after time, he didn't feel the slightest difference. Moreover, his body didn't show any signs of absorbing the essence of the moon. Just like that, facing the full moon, he continued to inhale and exhale for a very long time. His tenacious character had a deep persistence. His persistence gave him strength. However, after all, he was still not an adult. Furthermore, he had madly vented for an entire day in the forest. Unknowingly, the fatigue from running madly in the forest during the day surged into his heart. It was as if there were 2 mountains on his eyelids. Slowly, even though he didn't want to, his eyes slowly closed, just like that. His entire body's consciousness sank into chaos. Just like that, he laid on the huge rock beneath him and fell into a deep sleep. Time passed bit by bit. The moonlight was still so enchanting, gently watching the world. Swoosh! After an unknown amount of time, the moon in the sky gradually moved to the center. The light of the full moon was like water, selflessly sprinkling down on all living things in the world. The silver moonlight draped the earth with a silver veil. At this moment, Shirtian, due to the fatigue from the day and the fact that he hadn't fully grown into an adult Tiger King, finally couldn't hold on any longer. Lying on the rock, he fell into a deep sleep. His consciousness was in a state of unconsciousness. His breathing came one after another. As he inhaled and exhaled, it seemed extremely natural. It was as if he was following some kind of pattern. The silver moonlight sprinkled on that huge rock. At once, that simple and unadorned rock mysteriously emitted traces of fluorescent light. It was as if it was absorbing the moonlight that shone on it. It was very mysterious. If someone was beside it, they would be able to clearly see that this huge rock was enveloped in a layer of faint white light. Tion, who was lying on the rock, also seemed to have benefited from it. As he inhaled and exhaled, a miraculous thing happened. Every time he breathed, the strands of moonlight that sprinkled on the boulder would enter his body through the pores of Sakra's body, disappearing without a trace. In this world, it was very difficult to become a demon. If one didn't have any fortuitous encounters and opportunities, not even 1 out of 10,000 animals in the forest would be born. Why? It was because the conditions for becoming a demon were simply too harsh. First of all, one had to have a certain level of spirituality. Only creatures with spirituality had the opportunity to develop spiritual intelligence. This step was called enlightenment in the demon race. The so-called enlightenment was also the development of spiritual intelligence. What was the definition of spiritual intelligence? It was very simple. It meant that if an animal suddenly had the ability to think like a human, and was no longer ignorant, this was called enlightenment. Although enlightenment seemed to be very simple, it was definitely not as simple as one would imagine. Without fortuitous encounters, it was very difficult for there to be an exception. For example, consuming some kind of spiritual essence, eating a 1,000-year-old red fruit, 1,000-year-old Ganoderma lucidum, etc. These were all opportunities that could lead to the development of spiritual intelligence. After gaining spiritual intelligence, the body would naturally have an instinct. They could faintly feel the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, and the essence of the sun and moon above their heads. In their ignorance, they would unconsciously absorb these external forces and accumulate them in their bodies. After accumulating over time, perhaps 100 years, or even 1,000 years, they would accumulate enough energy and condense an inner core in their bodies. When they had an inner core, their spiritual intelligence would increase again, and they would begin to know how to absorb the essence of the sun and moon on their own, transforming their bodies and making themselves stronger. At the same time, they would also have various magical powers. At this time, they could be called demon beasts. At the same time, they would have the power to transform. However, there was a trick to this transformation. If they did not understand it, it would be difficult for them to transform and truly become a demon. Think about it, demon beasts were formed from animals. They originally only knew how to absorb the energy of heaven and earth, so how could they know how to transform? They probably did not even have the consciousness to transform. With this, one could already imagine how difficult it was for demons to cultivate. Difficult? It was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Tion was reborn as a tiger. He was born with spiritual intelligence, and he was as intelligent as a human. Therefore, he had passed the enlightenment hurdle without going through it. From this point of view, he was definitely a natural-born demon. He had the best potential to become a demon. Misfortune was a blessing in disguise, and a blessing in disguise. However, this was the bad thing. He had consciousness, and it was still the consciousness of a human. In his heart, he had never thought about how to absorb the essence of the sun and moon, or the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. He had never thought about it, and he did not know what the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was. Naturally, there was no way to connect with the spiritual energy of heaven and earth outside his body. Therefore, he had never felt any difference from other animals, except that he was more intelligent than them. Now, the sudden change allowed him to see immortal cultivators, and finally made him understand that there was such a thing as cultivation in this world. Therefore, he began to absorb the essence of the sun and moon. However, he did not have a foundation, and he was deliberately doing it. There was no way he could enter a natural state, so how could he feel the power of the moonlight? Several hours of inhaling and exhaling had no effect at all. The ranking will start at 12 o'clock tonight. Readers with tickets, please vote a few recommendations. I'll add them to my collection. Drifting thanks here. Chapter 4. If it wasn't for the boulder that he was lying on, even if Chertion could finally feel the heaven and earth spiritual chi in the outside world, it definitely wouldn't be something that could be done in a short period of time. It would take at least 1 or 2 months. And this originally needed 1 or 2 months, but because of the boulder that he was lying on, it was shortened. Breathe in and out. Bits of moon essence continuously entered his body through the countless pores all over his body, turning into a warm current that kept circulating in his body. It shuttled back and forth through every inch of his body. Every time it circulated, a small part of this warm current would naturally merge into every inch of his muscles, causing his body to constantly strengthen. Chertion had gone through a huge change, and had madly run through the forest for an entire day without stopping. Deep fatigue caused him to fall into a deep sleep. In this drowsy state, he could feel that there seemed to be a very comfortable aura circulating in his body. It made the 108,000 pores all over his body feel indescribably comfortable. It was a warm feeling as if he was nestled in the arms of a white tiger. The moon rose and the sun set, day and night alternated. As time passed, the moonlight dissipated, and a red sun slowly rose from the east. The golden morning sun emitted the first ray of light of the day to the heaven and earth. The warm sunlight sprinkled on Chertion's body, causing him to wake up from his deep sleep. What's wrong with me? I feel like I have an inexhaustible amount of energy. After waking up, Chertion felt the changes in his body almost immediately. The fatigue from yesterday had long been swept away, and every inch of his body seemed to contain an endless amount of energy. The blood in his body was boiling, and he couldn't help but be secretly surprised. Deep in thought, he stood up, closed his eyes, and quietly felt the changes in his body. Not only did his body become much stronger, Chertion could also clearly feel that there was a cool current circulating up and down his body. It flowed endlessly, and every time it circulated, an incomparably comfortable feeling would emerge from every part of his body. It seemed like it was driving the circulation of his chi and blood. Why is there a strange air current in my body? Sakura raised his head to look at the sky. The bright red sun had already replaced the bright full moon. Could it be that I really absorbed the essence of the moon sprinkled by the moon last night? However, as soon as this idea popped up, it made Sakura even more bewildered. Regarding yesterday's behavior, he remembered very clearly. Although he had indeed been desperately breathing towards the moon, he didn't absorb the so-called essence of the sun and moon. What he breathed was still ordinary air, which was no different from usual. When he fell into a deep sleep, he didn't feel any chi flow in his body. However, the changes in his body were too strange. Not only did his body become much stronger in one night, there was also a strange warm current. It seemed that the warm current had considerable benefits for him. After a moment of contemplation, he still couldn't figure it out. Roar! Chertion stood on the boulder and let out a tiger's roar. For the time being, he put aside the doubts in his heart. Whether or not he could really absorb the essence of the sun and moon, he would naturally be able to test it at night. Now was not the time to delve into it, because his stomach was already protesting in dissatisfaction. I'm going to hunt. A thought appeared in Chertion's mind. Although he had not truly reached the state of an adult tiger, his hunting skills were more or less trained. Now that the tiger mother had been captured, it was already impossible for him to drink tiger juice again. Whether he could survive in the forest or not, he could only rely on himself in the future. Jumping off the boulder, his 4 strong legs quickly ran on the ground. The place he ran to was not the cave where he was staying, but directly ran to the valley under the waterfall. There was water in the valley, and all kinds of animals in the vicinity drank from the valley. There were animals in the valley every day. As long as he went in, he would not have to worry about not finding a prey to hunt. When Tirtian arrived at the entrance of the valley, he did not immediately jump in. Instead, he carefully hid his body at the entrance of the valley and looked into the valley. In the valley, he saw a tall wild wolf standing by the pool. It stuck its head into the pool and drank the sweet spring water in the pool mouthful by mouthful. There's only one wild wolf. After a few months of non-stop training, I should be able to hunt it. Indra coldly looked at the lone wolf in his line of sight. His body had been tempered for several months, and every muscle in his body contained powerful strength. Compared to an adult tiger, it was only slightly worse. Moreover, he didn't know what happened last night, but his body had strengthened a lot again. This gave him the confidence to attack the wolf. Awoo! After estimating the strength of his own side and the opponent's side, Tirtian finally began to move. His 2 feet stepped hard on the ground, and his whole body directly rose into the air with a huge force. With one leap, he leaped a distance of 10 meters. After a few leaps, he was behind the wild wolf. Finally, with a strong aura, he soared into the sky. His 2 front claws revealed sharp tiger claws, and he pounced on the wild wolf. The clouds follow the dragon, the wind follows the tiger. Before he pounced, a gust of wind accompanied by Tirtian's leap and blew on the wild wolf's body. Awoo! Those who were able to survive in the jungle were all experienced and highly vigilant. As soon as the wild wolf felt the evil wind coming from the top of its head, it immediately knew that it was not good. It was very alert, so it fell to the side and rolled. Hiss! During this fall and roll, Tirtian's tiger claws fell on the back of the wild wolf. He tore with force, and with one claw, a piece of flesh the size of a palm was torn off from the wolf's body. Blood spurted out and immediately dyed the ground below red. Awoo! Just when Tirtian was about to silently celebrate the results of the battle, suddenly, a kind of omen flashed in his mind. Then, a few terrifying wolf howls sounded. In the blink of an eye, there were 2 more wild wolves in the valley. Including the original one, there were a total of 3 wolves. They had planned to ambush here and deliberately set up a trap to lure their prey. At this time, a wild wolf had already revealed its sharp wolf teeth and pounced on Tirtian. This is a trap. An idea immediately emerged in Sakra's mind. After a moment of shock, he became even calmer. A few months of hard training had finally come in handy at this time. Facing the wolf that pounced on him, he quickly leaned to the side. The tiger tail behind him suddenly rose up high, and like an iron whip, it forcefully lashed at the wolf in midair. Bang! The tiger had 3 unique skills: 1 pounce, 2 scissors, 3 lift. However, Tirtian had specially tempered this tail, so that the tail was not only flexible, but also when it was whipped at full strength, its power was absolutely not to be underestimated. The wolf just happened to be whipped in the waist and fell to the ground. It struggled a few times but did not get up. Awoo! He did not know what happened to the wild wolves today. One by one, their eyes were green, emitting a fierce light. The remaining 2 did not escape. Instead, they attacked him fiercely again. This fight relied on real martial art. He used his teeth to bite, claws to claw, and body to ram. He used his whole body from top to bottom. Sakra was the natural king of beasts, but these wild wolves were evil wolves that survived under the cruel law of the jungle. This fight could be said to be incomparably tragic and similarly extremely bloody. Gotcha! After a fierce battle, Tirtian found an opportunity and pounced forward fiercely. His movements were as fast as lightning. He opened his mouth and bit the neck of a wild wolf. The huge force of the bite instantly crushed the wolf's throat. When the last wild wolf saw this, its eyes flashed fiercely. It knew that it would not be able to get away with it. With wounds all over its body, it ran out of the valley. Gulu gulu! Seeing the last wild wolf run away, Shirtyen's heart was slightly relieved. He subconsciously took a breath. He did not expect that he was biting the wolf's throat. With this breath, a large mouthful of wolf blood flowed into his throat. With a gulu sound, he swallowed it into his stomach. The hot wolf blood made his body, which was already full of scars and exhausted from the battle, feel warm. At the same time, the strange cool energy in his body suddenly became excited. It kept moving around in his body, and with every circle it made, the wolf blood in his stomach began to merge with his flesh and blood. In his dantian, a stream of hot air rose. Under the guidance of the cool energy, it moved around his body. With every circle it made, a part of the hot air would be merged with the cool energy. As a result, the mysterious cooling aura grew stronger. His spirit was refreshed. Could this be the legendary refining of spiritual essence? Could it be that this is the cultivation method of the demon race? Devouring blood to strengthen essence? A thought emerged in Sakra's mind, but he didn't stay for long. Seeing that drinking blood also had this benefit, he didn't think much about it. He opened his mouth and swallowed the wolf blood in big mouthfuls. The steaming wolf blood turned into wisps of hot air and rose in his body. He did not know why, but when he drank blood in his previous life, he did not feel disgusted at all. He did not feel disgusted at all. Instead, he felt it was sweet. Drinking blood, all the cells in his body were jumping with joy. Who cares if he is born bloodthirsty? I must live. I must live. I must cultivate to become a demon. After drinking the wolf blood, Shirtyen bit a wolf and walked towards the cave where he was resting. There were many wounds on his body. Dark red blood stained the nearby fur. There was no fire in the forest, and Sakra also didn't intend to drill wood to start a fire. Returning to the cave, he looked at the cold scene inside the cave, and the hatred in his heart towards the two cultivators from before deepened. He tore a piece of wolf meat from the wolf and swallowed it to fill his stomach. Lying in the cave, he closed his eyes and began to feel the mysterious airflow in his body. Strangely enough, although this flow of energy was in his body, it was not under his control. It shuttled back and forth in his body on its own. As it had just eaten its fill, this flow of energy seemed to have become excited. It emitted a magical power, breaking down the food in his stomach into strands of energy and essence, which were used to strengthen this flow of energy. Friends who read books, please recommend a few books. Add it to the list of new books. Drifting thanks. Chapter 5. It's not that I don't want to get clicks, it's just that I don't want to do that. What's the point of breaking a chapter just for a few clicks? I read 2 chapters a day, which is equivalent to 3 chapters for others. So, I hope that my brothers can recommend and bookmark my chapters while reading. I'll only say this once, I won't add these in my chapters in the future. At this moment, it was spring and the flowers were in full bloom. The darkness of the night gradually shrouded the entire mountain forest. The tall mountains were hidden in the darkness. The night wind blew, rustling the leaves in the forest, as if a young girl was whispering. The birds that chirped non-stop in the forest during the day all flew back to their nests. Only the night insects were chirping non-stop. The sky was dotted with stars like chess pieces on a chessboard. A crescent moon hung in the sky. Strands of moonlight scattered to the ground as usual. A black tiger was quietly shuttling through the mountain forest. Because it was black, it had a natural concealment effect in the dark. If one was not careful, it would be difficult to find its whereabouts. The place where Sakra went to was the boulder during the day. Perhaps it was because of the changes last night, but he felt that his appetite had increased greatly. The 2 adult wolves that he hunted in the morning had been eaten clean by him in a day. Lying in the cave, he could clearly feel that the blood food in his body was constantly being converted into energy, strengthening the mysterious airflow in his body. This conversion speed was very fast. Therefore, the blood food in his stomach would be digested in a short while. After a day, the two wolves were only left with a pile of bones. This was a very strange thing. Sakura walked towards the location of the rock and fell into contemplation. Why am I still unable to absorb the essence of the sun and moon? When I breathe in and out, all I breathe is air, and there's no different energy at all. But if I can't absorb the essence of the sun and the moon, then where did the mysterious airflow in my body come from? Man, the reason why he could become the spirit of all things was because he had wisdom and knew how to think. Although Deshirtian was reborn, he still had the wisdom of a human. When he encountered a problem, he didn't just muddle through it. Instead, he silently pondered. Doubt. Deshirtian was very confused. As for the path of cultivation, he had only begun to dabble in it, and no matter how hard he racked his brains, he still couldn't find the source. He could only shake his pitch-black tiger head and temporarily put these questions aside. After eating the blood meal tonight, he couldn't wait to walk out of the cave when he saw the moon. He lay at the entrance of the cave and raised his head. He looked at the moon and started to breathe in and out again, wanting to absorb the essence of the sun and moon into his body. Anticipation was not the same as reality. This continued for more than half an hour. Just like last night when he was awake, he didn't absorb the essence of the sun and moon at all. This result couldn't help but cause him to feel a wave of vexation in his heart. In the midst of his vexation, he wondered if the place he was standing was not high enough. Yesterday, he was lying on top of the waterfall. The waterfall fell down vertically like a valley, and the place he was lying on was a small mountain peak. Thinking of this, Deshirtian's heart began to feel hopeful again. Only then did he return to the waterfall peak in the dark of the night. The jungle at night had always been the most dangerous time of the day. Many animals that were hiding during the day began to come out of their caves at this time to look for food. Deshirtian had the natural aura of the king of beasts. In addition, it was the first time he hunted during the day, so there was a certain amount of murderous aura around him. Walking in the jungle, there weren't any wild beasts that dared to attack him. He didn't stop all the way to the waterfall peak where he stayed last night. His two tiger eyes could see the surrounding scenery very clearly in the dark of the night. In front of him was a river. The river flowed down from a higher mountain peak. It naturally formed a waterfall as it flowed down vertically from the steep mountain peak. There were a few pine trees beside the river. There was also a huge boulder. The boulder's shape was like an enlarged egg. It was oval-shaped, and its surface had become very smooth after being washed by the rain. When the moonlight shone on it, it reflected a fluorescent light. It faintly gave off a simple and unadorned aura. Hoa! Deshirtian didn't pay too much attention to the boulder when he saw it. He just wanted to find a suitable place to lie down, and the boulder's position was the best. Therefore, he didn't look at it for too long. He leaped onto the boulder. Huff! Inhale! He pressed his tongue against his upper jaw, raised his head, and breathed rhythmically at the bright crescent moon above his head. He breathed in and out. When he exhaled the waste from his abdomen. When he inhaled, he had the aura of wanting to swallow the entire moon. The moonlight shone on the boulder, reflecting a layer of silver light. Specks of moonlight quietly gathered from all directions. These were the essence of the moon. When they gathered, some of them landed on Deshirtian's body. The moonlight quickly entered his body through the countless pores all over his body. And there's a reaction. Sakura was concentrating on inhaling and exhaling, hoping to receive the essence of the sun and moon. Suddenly, he didn't know why, but he clearly felt that from his entire body, there were strands of cool aura that mysteriously drilled into his body through countless pores. At the same time, the flow of energy in his body also became excited. It excitedly circulated all over his body, devouring the wisps of aura. Every time it devoured a wisp, it would grow a little stronger. This situation made Deshirtian very excited. Could it be that I've really received the essence of the sun and moon? This thought turned around in his mind, but he didn't think too much about it. He quickly returned his attention to inhaling and exhaling, afraid that the essence of the sun and moon would suddenly disappear. He silently felt the flow of energy. Unknowingly, Tian seemed to find himself in a strange state. In this state, his mind was unprecedentedly calm. Although he didn't open his eyes, everything around him seemed to be clearly imprinted in his mind. This indescribable and unexplainable state lasted for an unknown period of time. Unknowingly, Tian only felt that the essence of the sun and moon that was rushing into his body through his pores suddenly disappeared. He naturally woke up from this mysterious state. Looking up, the bright red sun had slowly begun to rise from the east. It was actually early morning. Crackle! He moved his body slightly. Suddenly, there was a burst of intense crackling sounds all over his body, like beans being fried. It was the sound of bones moving. After this burst of crackling sounds, he only felt that every inch of his body had an indescribable comfort. Whether it was his body or his mind, they had all reached an unprecedented state. Roar! An impulse to roar to the sky arose in his body. Tian didn't suppress it and directly opened his mouth to let out a tiger's roar. When he roared, the mysterious flow of energy in his body also became excited and quickly appeared at his throat, wanting to rush out. But for some reason, when it was about to merge with the tiger's roar, it was directly blocked by a strange thing. It was incomparably sturdy, and the mysterious flow of energy couldn't break through. Even so, this roar was louder than usual, and a strong tiger's might that had never been there before roared out. At this moment, the aura of the King of Beasts was undoubtedly revealed. Hearing the tiger's roar, the forest in the early morning was like an explosion, and a large number of beasts were frightened and ran away. Facts have proven that I can indeed absorb the essence of the sun and moon. The mysterious flow of energy in my body has more than doubled because of the absorption last night. As long as I don't give up and persevere, I will definitely be able to cultivate into a demon and condense an inner core in my body. Tian's heart was filled with endless confidence at this moment. If he could continue to become stronger, then there would be a chance to find White Tiger Mother and the two Tiger Brothers. Compared to when they first found out that there were immortal cultivators in this world, and when White Tiger Mother and the rest were taken away by immortal cultivators, now, they were cultivating. This was the only straw he could grab hold of. But why couldn't I absorb the essence of the sun and moon in front of the cave, but on the mountain, I could feel it? While Tian was happy, a trace of doubt arose in his heart. Although he used the same method to absorb the essence of the sun and moon, of course, he didn't know whether this method was right or wrong. But he didn't get anything at the foot of the mountain, but he could absorb the mysterious essence of the sun and moon on the mountain. This aroused his curiosity. Could it be that cultivation can only be done at a high place? After pondering for a long time, because he knew nothing about cultivation, he could only come up with this somewhat inconceivable result. Shaking his head, he threw these messy thoughts out of his mind, left the mountain peak, and entered the forest. Hunting. Although he now understood the path he was going to take in the future and had some results, absorbing the essence of the sun and moon could strengthen the flow of energy in his body. Here, Tian called the flow of energy in his body demonic power. However, after yesterday's experience, he understood that there was more than one way to strengthen demonic power. After summarizing, he came up with a few ideas. First, of course, was to strengthen it by absorbing the essence of the sun and moon. The demonic power absorbed in this way should be the purest. It was also very beneficial to him. Second, through eating blood food. In layman's terms, it was food. Refining the energy in the food and turning it into essence could be used to strengthen demonic power. This method should be faster and more direct. The more he ate, the more essence he would get after digestion. If he ate the meat of a 100-year-old spirit beast, it might increase the demonic power in his body in a short period of time. However, the demonic power obtained from the second method should be full of impurities and not pure. After absorbing the demonic power, he still needed to carefully refine the impurities in it. I can't let go of the essence of the sun and moon, and I can't give up on the blood food. Chertion rushed into the forest and began to hunt. No matter what, he couldn't treat his stomach unfairly. After a night of cultivation, the strength in his body increased again. Hunting was no longer a big problem. After hunting a small wild boar alone in the forest, like yesterday, he first used his sharp tiger claws to cut open the wild boar's stomach, pulled out the internal organs, dug a hole in the ground, and buried it. After eating a third of the wild boar, he quietly lay in the cave, closed his eyes and felt the demonic power running in his body, turning the blood food into essence and strengthening his demonic power. After roughly refining it, he returned to the cave and, as usual, worked hard to temper his physical body. After knowing how to become stronger, Chertion didn't want to waste a minute. Bang, bang, bang! Time and time again, he used his body to smash against the towering ancient tree. Intense pain continuously circulated in his body. Just imagine, every time he smashed against the tree, it was undoubtedly using his flesh and blood to smash against the stone. That kind of pain was inhuman, but how could the pain be compared to the strong persistence and deep hatred in his heart? He not only hated the two immortal cultivators who took White Tiger and the others away, but he also hated himself for not having the strength to stop all of this. Hatred was a heart-wrenching pain, but it was also the motivation to persevere. Swish! Just when Chertion hit the tree with a bang, he didn't notice that there was a snow-white streamer in the sky, crossing the sky and coming to the forest where he was. Chapter 6. The white light streaked across the sky. Originally, it was going to fly into the distance. However, for some reason, it seemed to have heard a strange noise from below. It paused in midair, then decisively changed direction and landed in the forest. Swoosh! Silently, just as Sakura was trying his best to temper his physical body, a person inexplicably appeared beside him. Moreover, it was a peerless beauty who was so beautiful that one couldn't help but be attracted to her. Her complexion was white with a faint rosy glow. Her complexion could only be described as perfect. No matter how picky a person was, when they saw her appearance, they would still praise her as devastatingly beautiful. Especially on this peerless beauty, there was a charm that came from her bones. She was a combination of a fairy and a seductress. She wore a snow-white palace dress that perfectly accentuated her impressive figure. From top to bottom, the places that should be concave were concave, and the places that should be convex were convex. It was as if she was a masterpiece of the heavens, and all the beautiful things in the world were entrusted to her. Between her two arms, there was a ribbon that was woven from an unknown material. It danced in the wind, adding to her fairy-like temperament. Her hair was as smooth as a waterfall, tied up by a jade hairpin on her head. Pfft! This peerless beauty's arrival was silent. Chertion's willpower was all used to endure the pain in his body. He just kept slamming his body against the tree. This kind of silly behavior was watched by the woman beside him for a while. She couldn't help but cover her mouth and chuckle. "Oh woo!" When this sound fell into Chertion's ears, it was no less than a thunderclap in his head. He immediately stopped his training, exerted force on his feet, and quickly turned around. He was on full alert. Was this a human's voice? There was someone behind him. Could it be that the people who took the White Tiger mother away had returned? When he turned around, Sakura's heart was also fluctuating intensely. When he turned his head to look, his mind went blank in an instant. Beautiful! Extremely shocking beauty. Even with the experience of his previous life, He had never seen such a peerless beauty like this before. This person's beauty was enough to make one's heart sink. Moreover, it wasn't just her appearance, especially that inexplicable charm, it made one's heart tremble. It made one want to kneel at her feet and do whatever she said. Who is this? She actually has such a peerless beauty that makes all things pale in comparison. However, this person who suddenly appeared is definitely not an ordinary person. I must not let her know about this. Although Tion had never seen such a soul-stirring beauty before, but his will had long been tempered to an incomparably firm and resolute after several successive unforeseen events. He was only stunned for a moment, and in a blink of an eye, he regained his composure. Now that he had recovered, his expression remained unchanged. He still pretended to be in a daze. The appearance of the mysterious woman in front of him was too mysterious. At this moment, he did not dare to show that he was clear-headed. He wanted to see what this woman wanted to do. Pfft! Looking at Tian's stunned expression, the mysterious woman couldn't help but cover her mouth and chuckle again. He carefully sized him up, nodded his head, and murmured, In the tiger clan, white tigers and black tigers are the rarest. They are born with a unique spirituality. They can often understand how to absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, and the essence of the sun and moon. They have a long lifespan and can form an inner core. They can become demonic beasts. One more step and they can pass the heavenly tribulation and become demonic beasts. They have the same spirituality as the Fox clan. What the ancients said is true. A little black tiger has such spirituality and knows how to train its body. Speaking up to here, she made a sound of surprise and said in surprise, There's demonic energy in your body. She didn't notice before, but now that she looked carefully, the demonic energy in Tian's body couldn't escape. This made the mysterious woman surprised. Her eyes turned slightly and the corner of her mouth pulled up into a faint smile. Squatting down, she reached out a jade-white hand and gently patted Tian's head. A strange fragrance entered his nose. This fragrance was very unique. As long as he smelled it, it was as if it was imprinted in his heart. It was incomparably deep. Tian suddenly had a thought. Perhaps, in this life, he would never forget this special fragrance. Little black tiger, I originally wanted to run away, but I was attracted by you. It seems that there is a heaven's will in the underworld. Help me this time. The mysterious woman's smile naturally carried an indescribable charm. She reached out and touched her waist. There was a colorful pouch hanging there. With a flash of light, a simple and unadorned cyan treasure box fell into her hand. Taking out the treasure box, she said to Tian, Little black tiger, this time, I have a powerful enemy chasing after me. The thing in the treasure box is very important to me. You must protect it well. I will lure the enemy away first. In a few days, sister will come back to take it. Do you understand? The mysterious woman's voice carried a strange power. Every word seemed to be imprinted into Tian's soul. No matter how alert Tian was, after hearing this, he felt that his body was completely out of control. He opened his mouth and held the treasure box in his mouth. With 4 legs, he ran back into the cave. During this process, Tian's consciousness was still relatively clear. However, he had lost control of his body. He could only watch as his body moved, but he could not do anything. All right, now you should have a good sleep. When you wake up, everything will be over. Don't worry, I won't let you keep it for me for free. This bottle of energy-gathering pills will be my reward. The mysterious woman lightly opened her red lips and spat out a sentence. After that, Sakura felt an urge to sleep without any warning in his consciousness, and he immediately acted on it. Lying down in the cave, he fell into a deep sleep. He no longer knew what was happening outside his body. After doing all this, the mysterious woman raised her head and looked in the direction she came from. A red light was really chasing after her. Her expression changed slightly. This stinky cow's nose is chasing me so closely. No, I can't stay here. A snow-white ribbon appeared under her feet and lifted her up. She flew into the air and quickly escaped into the distance. Celestial fragrant fox king, don't run. Quickly hand over the imperial heavenly treasure box. Otherwise, even if I have to chase you to the ends of the earth, I will kill you. You won't be able to escape. Seeing that the mysterious woman was about to escape with the white ribbon, an angry roar rolled out like thunder. The powerful pressure caused many creatures in the forest to feel fear. They fled in panic. Humph! Green Cloud Cow Nose, don't scare me. You are a nascent soul-stage old monster, and I am also a demon king. I am not afraid of you. If you have the ability, wait until you catch me. The mysterious woman's voice carried a trace of disdain. However, the speed of his escape had increased by a few notches. If Tion had not fallen into a deep sleep and was awake, he would have been able to clearly hear that not long after these two sentences were spoken, a place not far from the mountain range in the forest suddenly exploded with bursts of light. Continuous rumbling sounds resounded through the heavens and the earth. Countless creatures could only tremble and lie on the ground, not daring to move. Who? Regarding the matters outside his body, Sakura knew nothing about it. Lying in the cave, he was sleeping soundly. In his sleep, the natural aura of the king of beasts on his body also made no animals dare to stay nearby. That was a kind of natural fear, which also made him not have the tragedy of being swallowed by some beast because he was asleep. Roar! He did not know how long he had slept. Perhaps 1 day, perhaps 3 days. Tion's tiger eyes that had been closed all this time suddenly opened. Light flashed as he let out a low roar. He quickly looked around him. Luckily, I haven't been captured. The familiar surroundings were a sign that he was still in the forest and that he was still free. Looking left and right, he was suddenly attracted by 2 objects below him. A light flashed in his eyes. He recalled what had happened before he fell into a deep sleep. I am not dreaming. Everything that happened before is real. Below him, there was a simple green box. There were many mysterious patterns on the treasure box. When they were combined together, the treasure box had a mysterious aura. The front of the treasure box was divided into many small grids. On each of the grids, there were different patterns of different colors. There were more than 1,000 of these grids. Each of them was very small and messy. However, when they were distributed on the treasure box, they looked very natural. Every single one of them was connected together very naturally. If one did not look carefully, one would not be able to see the small gaps between these grids. It seemed like this was how it was originally. This, could it be? Tion saw it and his heart shook violently. His tiger eyes widened as he looked carefully at these grids. Not long after, his eyes were fixed on one of the grids. That grid was different from the others. There were no patterns on it. It was completely blank. This is a puzzle? Yes, if this blank grid was knocked down, the jade grid would be able to move. In addition, there were thousands of identical jade grids with different patterns on them. It was like a jigsaw puzzle that he had seen in his previous life. This discovery made Sakura excited, but at the same time, he was also full of doubts. He was very curious about who the mysterious woman who inexplicably handed this jade box to him was. Also, what was inside the jade box that made it so mysterious? Interesting. A jigsaw puzzle. A human-like expression appeared on the black tiger's face. The corner of his mouth pulled into an arc. A jigsaw puzzle. It seemed like nothing, but it was a game that tested one's intelligence. The more pieces a pattern was divided into, the more difficult it was to piece them together. Dozens of pieces would be easy to piece together. Hundreds of pieces would be difficult to piece together without high intelligence. However, thousands of pieces would be a test of one's patience, intelligence, and memory. It was not something that could be easily pieced together. Chapter 7. Pata! He lifted his tiger claw and flipped the treasure box over, looking at it carefully. The treasure box seemed to be made by nature, without a single gap. It was as if it was originally a whole piece, without a lock or switch. It was very strange. Suddenly, Tirtian faintly guessed that the opening mechanism of this treasure box was the puzzle on top of the box. In his previous life, he had heard someone mention it once. It was said that in ancient times there was a mechanism called the puzzle mechanism. It was the kind of mechanism that separated a complete sentence into different parts and put them together in a disordered order. Only when the complete picture was put together could the mechanism be opened. This kind of mechanism was very rare. There was another type of mechanism that was similar to a jigsaw puzzle, which was called a spelling mechanism. For example, a complete sentence and some completely unrelated words would be placed together and the order would be disrupted, allowing people to find the sentence and combine it according to a certain pattern. These two types of mechanisms were extremely rare. He silently looked at the treasure box for a while. Then, he slowly moved his gaze away from the treasure box. He looked at the jade bottle beside the box. The jade quality of this jade bottle was more perfect than most of the jade he had seen in his previous life. Most caves would be somewhat dark, but in this kind of environment, the jade bottle faintly glowed with a jade light. Pooh! Opening the jade bottle, a strange medicinal fragrance suddenly came out of the bottle. Tirtian breathed in the bottle, and the medicinal fragrance entered his 5 viscera and 6 bowels through his nose. Boom! The demonic power in his body was excited like a sow in heat, and quickly rushed towards the medicinal fragrance. In the blink of an eye, Tirtian clearly felt that the demonic power in his body immediately became thicker after swallowing the medicinal fragrance. His spirit was lifted. Could it be that this bottle contains the spirit-gathering pill that mysterious woman spoke of? Tirtian put the cap back on the bottle and lightly shook it. The pill in the bottle made a crisp sound. He took a look just now, and this bottle was not simple. It did not look very big from the outside, but the thumb-sized pill in the bottle should be more than 100 pills. His tiger eyes revealed traces of human-like light. He thought to himself, that woman from before is definitely not an ordinary person. She cared so much about the treasure box, and used a method to hide the treasure box with me. This is definitely not an ordinary treasure. And this spirit-gathering pill, I haven't eaten it yet. Just the medicinal fragrance from the pill increased the demonic power in my body by a lot. If I take this pill for a long time, it will definitely greatly increase my cultivation speed. Who knows, I might even be able to condense an inner core. Thinking about this, Tirtian's heart was somewhat bitter. If he wanted to cultivate to become a demon, it seemed to be a long way off. Now that he had demonic power, he had also found ways to absorb the essence of the sun and moon and consume blood food to increase his demonic power. However, he truly felt that he was still missing a very important thing. It was something that was extremely important to cultivation. Cultivation method. A cultivation method that could allow him to truly step into the world of immortals. That's right, this was what Tirtian desired the most. In his previous life, there were many myths and legends in Huaxia, and there was no lack of stories about the demonic race. For example, in the legend of the White Snake, a 1,000-year-old snake demon, by Suzhen, cultivated for more than 1,000 years. However, when she met a Fai, she was forcibly restrained. 1,000 years of cultivation could not compare to 100 or 200 years of cultivation. This was something that was very worthy of consideration. Regarding this, Sakura had also thought about it carefully. If one had to say the reason, there was no other reason. Firstly, the demon clan was not as blessed by nature as humans. Their intelligence was not as good as that of humans. Even if they had some intelligence and knew how to absorb the spiritual chi of heaven and earth and the essence of the sun and moon, they would not be like humans, who would focus their attention on it. They would absorb it unconsciously. With this kind of cultivation method, if one wanted to increase their demonic power, it would naturally be half the result with twice the effort. Furthermore, the demonic race was formed from the birds and beasts of the mountain forest. They were born and nurtured by the heavens. There was no way to obtain a suitable cultivation method. They could only cultivate according to their instincts. Think about it, with this kind of cultivation, how could the demonic race compare to humans? He had a good cultivation technique, a good master, and he had a lot of treasures. According to cultivation methods, a few decades of cultivation could be equivalent to hundreds or even thousands of years of cultivation of the demonic race. Such a gap. It also made the demonic race completely the target of the cultivators to kill the demonic race for their cores. If only there was a cultivation method, then it would be good. Tian thought in his heart. However, he also knew that this was just a beautiful wish of his. Gotcha! Throwing away the unrealistic thoughts in his mind, he looked at the two treasures in front of him. Needless to say, the treasure box was definitely a rare treasure. However, it was a pity that this treasure was placed by the mysterious woman. It might be taken away at any time. However, the spirit-gathering pill belonged to him. The pills inside were very precious. It could help increase his demonic power. After pondering for a while, he walked to a remote corner of the cave, waved his tiger claws, and quickly dug on the ground. The ground was very hard. Tian spent a lot of effort to dig a big hole that was big enough to put the treasure box and jade bottle. He opened his mouth and put the two treasures into the hole. Then, he filled in the surrounding soil that he dug out. After doing this, he thought for a while and covered it with a bear skin that he used to sleep. These were enough to cover up all traces of the incident. Leaving the cave, very hungry, Sakura also didn't know how long he had been sleeping. Looking at the top of his head, the sun was about to set. The sunset was hanging on the horizon, and the rays of light were thousands of threads, carrying the unique charm of the setting sun. He caught a few wild hares in the forest and ate until he was full. Returning to the cave, he dug out the jade bottle that contained the spirit-gathering pill. After pouring out a yellow, thumb-sized spirit-gathering pill, he put the pill in a piece of animal fur and wrapped it. Holding it in his mouth, he jumped out of the cave and quickly ran towards the mountain peak with the boulder. Tian arrived at the mountain peak with ease. Seeing the flowing river, he put the spirit-gathering pill wrapped in the fur beside him. He lowered his head and drank a few mouthfuls of water. Looking at the sky, the sun had already set. However, the moon did not appear immediately. He was not in a hurry. Lying beside the river, he sank into deep thought. The things that happened in the past few days were too inconceivable. They were all things that he had never seen before. While he was rich in experience, he was even more shocked. What kind of world was outside the mountain? Especially that mysterious treasure box. It was actually made up of thousands of puzzle pieces as the lock of the treasure box. To unlock it was an inhuman task. However, looking at it from another angle, using this kind of lock to lock the treasure box meant that the treasure box contained something extraordinarily precious. If he could get it, he might be pleasantly surprised. He also wanted to see what kind of changes this bottle of spirit-gathering pills could bring to him. The moonlight was like water, sparkling and translucent. It scattered on the surface of the river. As the river flowed, circles of water rippled with a layer of faint silver waves. They were like beautiful scales, giving people a sense of carefree and relaxed feeling. The moon is out. Tian was awakened by the sound of flowing water beside him. Looking at the reflection of the moonlight on the surface of the water, he raised his head. The bright crescent moon once again showed its gentle side. Without thinking too much, he raised his head and opened his mouth. Facing the moon, he began to breathe in and out like before. Every breath he took brought out a stream of air in front of him. But the strange thing was that although he could see the moonlight, he could not absorb it into his body. He was constantly breathing in and out as if it was useless. There was no effect at all. This action continued for a long time, but there was still no effect. Chertien's eyes were filled with confusion. What's going on? Last night, I was still able to absorb the essence of the sun and moon in the moonlight. My demonic power did indeed increase by almost 2 times after one night. Why is there no effect today? There was a trace of anxiety in his confusion. He couldn't understand what was going on. Just as he was confused, Chertien's eyes suddenly fell on a large boulder not far away. At this moment, the boulder was emitting a faint silver glow under the moonlight. Moreover, when the moonlight landed on the boulder, it seemed to be directly absorbed by the boulder. He also noticed something strange. The moonlight on the boulder was obviously much thicker than on other places. Could it be because of the boulder? Chertien pondered. Although he was reincarnated as a tiger, he still had his original sharp intelligence. With his brain, he only needed a short pause to realize that this boulder might be related to his demonic power and absorption of the essence of the sun and moon. When he first found out that demonic power had appeared in his body, he laid on this boulder and slept for a night. Later, he could not absorb the essence of the sun and moon in other places, but the second time he went up to the boulder, he absorbed the essence of the sun and moon again, causing the demonic power in his body to almost double. If the absorption of the essence of the sun and night was related to one's location, then the cave was at the foot of the mountain. Now, he was already on the mountain peak, but he still could not absorb the essence. This meant that perhaps, the height of one's location was not very particular. The real mystery might be on this boulder. Thinking of this, Chertien's eyes flashed. He put the fur wrapped around the spirit-gathering pill into his mouth, got up and jumped onto the boulder. He calmed his heart. He only felt that there was a magical power in the boulder below him, which allowed him to quickly enter a state of lightness. In this state of forgetting everything around him, Indra slowly regained the feeling of that night. Everything around him appeared in his mind. In the wisps of moonlight, there was a little silver-white tiny light spot. These light spots carried a trace of magical power. This is the essence of the moonlight? Chertien instantly understood what those dots of light were. He breathed naturally through his mouth and nose. When he exhaled, all the pores on his body closed. When he inhaled, all the pores on his body opened, and the essence of the sun and moon around him was sucked into his body. Then, as his demonic power circulated, it quickly gathered, causing the demonic power that was only as thick as a strand of hair to slowly grow. Chapter 8. Feeling the demonic energy in his body slowly increasing, Chertien finally understood that his ability to absorb the essence of the sun and moon had nothing to do with his strange breathing technique. It was all because of the large boulder that he was sitting on. At the same time, he faintly felt that this boulder was definitely not an ordinary object. Perhaps it was also a treasure. With a thought, he broke free from the wonderful state where he could feel the essence of the sun and moon outside his body. He stretched out his tiger claw and opened up the fur around him. A bright yellow pill appeared before his eyes. Wisps of a wonderful medicinal fragrance wafted out. Let me first see what's so special about this spirit-gathering pill. Since that mysterious girl gave me this pill, it must be something that I can use right now. Chertien's eyes were firm. He was still ignorant about cultivation. He knew that his knowledge was too lacking, to the point that he didn't even know the division of cultivation realms. If there were no accidents, he could endure absorbing the essence of the sun and moon every day and eating blood to slowly increase his demonic energy until one day, when his demonic energy reached a peak, he could naturally form an inner core. However, all of these required a large amount of time to accumulate and settle down. However, what he needed the most right now was to determine how to obtain a large amount of strength in a short period of time. Time was exactly what he didn't want to wait for the most. After all, he had time, but White Tiger Mother and the others might not have the time to wait. Gulp! Without much hesitation, he rolled his tongue and swallowed the spirit-gathering pill. As soon as the pill entered his mouth, it melted and entered his stomach. In an instant, a fierce heat rushed out of his body. It was like a fierce beast that could not be tamed, rushing back and forth in his body. Rushing into his meridians, the meridians that had not been opened up until now immediately sent out bursts of piercing pain. Right now, the meridians in Sakra's body were like a winding and narrow path, and this huge heat flow was like a carriage that was rushing at high speed, rampaging. With such ferocity, how could his meridians withstand it? Intense pain assaulted him again and again. Shirtion let out a muffled snort from his nose. He gritted his teeth and stubbornly guarded his mind. With his unswerving determination, he persisted time and time again. At the same time, his mind kept recalling the mysterious state he was in when he absorbed the essence of the sun and moon. He had a feeling that as long as he entered that state, the pain in his body would be greatly reduced. However, it was a pity, under the stimulation of the intense pain, he was unable to enter, and could only experience the torment of pain again and again. No, I won't fail. I'm going to cultivate into a demon. I'm going to save White Tiger Mommy. I'm definitely going to make it. Sakra crazily shouted at himself in his heart. His eyes emitted a kind of deranged look. Lying on the rock, he endured the pain with his unswerving will. Swish! At this moment, the faint light that was originally shining on the boulder beneath him suddenly surged for some reason. The sparkling and translucent light suddenly became resplendent. However, it only appeared for a moment before it disappeared. This disappearance caused the original brilliance of the boulder under the moonlight to completely disappear. The boulder became simple and unadorned. But at this moment, Shirtion felt that he seemed to have formed a mysterious connection with the boulder beneath him. A cool and mysterious force suddenly emerged from the boulder. When this energy entered his body, it was unusually gentle. Every part of his body felt incomparably comfortable. The meridians and injuries that had been severely damaged by the vigorous medicinal power of the spirit-gathering pill were rapidly being repaired. Furthermore, after the healing process, whether it was his body or his meridians, they were clearly strengthened. But Sakra didn't know that in the Xiuxian world, spirit-gathering pill was a top-grade spirit pill used to increase the cultivation of qi refining stage. One pill could allow a person at the 5th level of qi refining stage to directly enter the 6th level. The spirit-gathering pill contained an enormous amount of spiritual energy. Even immortal cultivators, before reaching a certain level of cultivation, would not dare to use it carelessly. They were afraid that the powerful medicinal energy would damage their meridians and destroy the foundation of their immortal cultivation. If that happened, even the best spirit roots would be destroyed. Shirtion had only just received his spirit-gathering pill. His control over his spirit-gathering pill was still somewhat lacking. If not for the fact that he was born in a better clan, the Tiger clan's physique was stronger and sturdier than that of a human's, he would not have been able to control his spirit-gathering pill. Furthermore, he persistently used the method of hitting trees every day to train his body. It made his body very sturdy. That was why his meridians weren't torn apart by the enormous medicinal power in the first place. Of course, even if he could endure it, the damage to his meridians would require a long period of time for Shirtion to recover. It could be said that it was a close call. Good. Today, I'll use my demonic power to absorb the huge amount of Ling Qi produced by the spirit-gathering pill. It will definitely increase my demonic power. Shirtion had not expected the mysterious power released by the boulder, but now was not the time to delve into it. The key was that the power released by the boulder was helping him heal the wounds in his body, and that was enough. Concentrating his mind, he began to urge his Yao Qi to quickly rush towards the huge amount of spirit Qi that was still running amok in his body. Under the impact of the huge amount of spirit Qi, the originally narrow meridians had become much wider. The speed of the demonic power was very fast. In the blink of an eye, it had rushed into the spirit Qi. Once it entered, the demonic power was like a hungry ghost that had been starving for God knows how many days. It greedily swallowed the spirit Qi, and the demonic power began to grow at a speed visible to the naked eye. The spiritual energy produced by the spirit-gathering pill was, after all, an unconscious existence. Although there was a large amount of spiritual energy, it only knew how to charge around recklessly. However, the demonic energy could continuously devour the spiritual energy and grow. Gradually, the situation began to reverse. As the spirit Qi circulated in circles within his body, the demonic power also followed and circulated countless times. With the protection of the boulder's mysterious power, the demonic power finally began to gain the upper hand. It began to excitedly chase after the spirit Qi, absorbing and refining it in large mouthfuls. Finally, after an unknown amount of time, whoosh! The medicinal power of the spirit-gathering pill had been completely absorbed by Di Shirtian. After refining the spirit-gathering pill, the demonic power increased by an unknown amount. Just as Di Shirtian was about to let out a sigh of relief, the mysterious power released by the boulder that was protecting his meridians suddenly changed. It quickly gathered into a ball, and like a wild horse that had broken free of its reins, it madly rushed into his mind. Bang! This change happened too suddenly. Moreover, it happened when Di Shirtian's mind was slightly relaxed. The boulder's power was too fast, and did not give him any chance to resist. As the saying goes, the brain is the sea of marrow, the upper dantian, the heart is the fire, the middle dantian, 3 inches below the navel is the lower dantian. The lower dantian is the place where the essence is stored, the middle dantian is the place where the qi is stored, and the upper dantian is the place where the spirit is stored. The ancients called the essence, qi, and spirit the 3 treasures. At this moment, this strange power was rushing into his brain, and was attacking his spirit storage. If it were to really wreak havoc in his mind, Di Shirtian would immediately turn into an idiot. Perhaps Di Shirtian did not know about other things, but he knew the importance of the brain. When he saw the power released by the boulder directly attacking his mind, he was horrified. But there was no way to stop it. He only felt a huge explosion in his head, and his mind went blank. With a muffled groan, he lay on the boulder and fainted. However, the unforeseen event did not stop because he fainted. A layer of sparkling halo appeared on the boulder again, gathered together, and quickly rushed into the body of the black tiger lying on the boulder. In an instant, a miraculous thing happened. Drops of blood began to seep out from the black tiger's body. These tiny drops of blood came out from the countless pores on its body. What was strange was that this blood was not red, but a mysterious black. The black tiger's body began to grow bit by bit. Its body, which was not yet fully grown, grew to the size of an adult tiger in a short time. Moreover, it did not stop growing even after reaching the size of an adult tiger. Hua hua hua! Amidst the loud breathing, the black tiger's body became bigger than an adult tiger. Its body was filled with the majestic aura of a tiger, and the aura of a king roared out. On its forehead, the purple stripes formed the word king, which was even more breathtaking. Just one look at it was enough to shake one's courage. It was undeniable that the black tiger now had the aura of a true king of beasts. A strong tiger aura was constantly emitted from its body, spreading to the surrounding forest. This was an invisible aura, the aura that the king of beasts was born with. As it spread in all directions, the animals that came out to hunt in the dark were so frightened that their legs turned to jelly. They lay on the ground, paralyzed. It was a kind of fear and submission that came from the depths of their souls. The entire forest was silent. Even the night insects did not make a sound. This made the forest seem a little strange. The change did not ease just because of the increase in size. A thick layer of black light emerged from the black tiger's body. The moonlight in the sky was like a river meeting the sea, rolling and surging into its body like a tide. Swoosh! When the moonlight reached its peak, a snow-white light column suddenly fell from the moon. The light column was made of moonlight. The shockingly rich essence of the sun and moon poured down and poured into Chertian's body. Even the boulder was shrouded in the light column. This scene was really shocking. The light column formed by the moonlight was too obvious, connecting the sky and the earth. It was very eye-catching. Countless creatures looked at the place where the light column fell in fear. The hundreds of beasts that were already lying limply on the ground lowered their bodies as much as they could. The Tiger Hill mountain range stretched for more than 10,000 miles. Near the mountain range was a country called the Chu country. The border of the Chu country was very big. Perhaps it should be said that the world was very big, beyond people's imagination. The Tiger Hill mountain range did not look small, but compared to the entire world, it was not worth mentioning. At the edge of the mountain range, there were many hunters who lived by hunting, forming a mountain village. The sudden change in the Tiger Hill mountain range naturally attracted the attention of many people. Chapter 9. I was busy signing the contract today, so I updated a little late. Sorry. Look, there's a strong light coming from there. I heard that if there's a strange light coming from somewhere, it's a sign that a treasure is about to be born. Why don't we go into the mountain together? Maybe we can make a fortune. In some of the small villages near Tiger Hill, such conversations could be found everywhere. There were many discussions about the strange light that suddenly appeared in the mountains. However, not many people actually took action. It was because they lived next to the mountains that they knew in their hearts that there were all kinds of birds and beasts roaming freely in the mountains. Many ferocious animals were in groups of 3 or 5. Even in normal times, if there weren't 4 or 5 hunters working together, they wouldn't dare to go in to hunt. Moreover, it was night, the time when beasts came out of their nests and started to hunt. Their attacks were the most ferocious. If they went into the mountains at this time, it wasn't a treasure hunt, but a death wish. The villagers didn't go into the mountains, but what happened that night, when some villagers went to the town to sell the furs, spread the news. A secret could only be called a secret when only one person knew about it. If a second person knew about it, it would be equivalent to letting everyone know about it. There wasn't much difference between telling one person and telling everyone. So, after the news spread out, the strange change in the Tiger Hill Mountains gradually spread in the Chu Kingdom, and the more it spread, the more ridiculous it became. Some people said that a treasure was about to be born, and some people said that there was a treasure in the mountains that was as rich as a country. In short, the more it spread, the more mysterious it became. As everyone knew, in this world, there was never a lack of curious people. Driven by curiosity or desire, many people began to come to the Tiger Hill Mountains with interest. Of course, this was all in the future. A beam of light fell from the moon, covering Chertian in the moonlight, and a large amount of essence of the sun and the moon unexpectedly poured into his body. At this time, Chertian was not unconscious. Although he had been unconscious before, he was still a reincarnated human after all. His spiritual power was much stronger than that of an ordinary animal, so he only fainted for a short while. When the moonlight shrouded his body, he began to wake up. Although he was awake, he didn't know what was happening outside his body. This was because the moment he woke up, he felt a huge amount of information surging into his mind. The feeling of having a large number of things suddenly appearing in one's head was very difficult for ordinary people to understand. Pain, it was extremely painful. Previously, it was said that the overbearing medicinal power of the spirit-gathering pill had ravaged his body, but now it was his spirit and even his soul that was suffering. This kind of pain was unbearable even if he wanted to. Hold on. You must hold on. Tian faintly felt that if he didn't hold on and lost consciousness this time, he might really become an idiot and lose his consciousness completely. At this moment, he could only grit his teeth and persevere. As he endured the boundless pain, the image of White Tiger and the others being captured appeared in his mind. A strong sense of hatred continuously surged, giving him the strength to continue. While he was suffering so much pain, the demonic energy in his body became abnormally excited. The essence of the sun and the moon continuously flowed into his body, causing the demonic energy to grow again. It continuously flowed through his body at lightning speed. Every time it reached a place, the demonic energy would separate and merge into his body, causing his body to become even stronger. Roar! When the intense pain from his soul reached its peak, Tian's tiger eyes suddenly opened. He suddenly stood up, raised his head, and let out a majestic tiger roar. This roar made his heart suddenly happy, because he felt that the unbearable pain seemed to have been vented a little from the tiger roar. The demonic energy also became very excited, sending out waves of energy to support the tiger roar. For a moment, this tiger roar was sometimes low and sometimes high. It became incomparably long and continuous. The sound was like gold and stone, echoing in the mountain range and resounding through the sky. Tian was comfortable, but the hundreds of beasts in the forest made a mess. He didn't know how long this tiger roar lasted. When it fell, the information in his mind that kept surging into his consciousness finally stopped. Urgently wanting to know what happened, Tian immediately calmed his mind when the roar stopped. He wanted to see what the information that just came out was. When he saw this, Tian couldn't help but open his mouth for a long time. His expression was as if he had suddenly encountered the most inconceivable thing. It was quite a surprise, and in the midst of the shock, there was an uncontrollable joy. That was a pure surprise without any color in it. Roar! In the midst of excitement, he couldn't suppress the joy in his heart, and the tiger roar sounded again. I've worn out iron shoes looking for something in vain, and found it without any effort. It seems that when the heavens let me transmigrate, they also gave me compensation, so that I have extraordinary luck. Tian was proud in his heart, and his eyes were forcefully suppressing the joy in his heart. Inheritance! Bloodline inheritance! If he hadn't experienced it himself, he would never have thought that there was such a mysterious secret method in the demon clan. Bloodline inheritance, speaking of which, was indeed a rather mysterious and unpredictable thing. This kind of inheritance could be said to be a unique secret method in the demon clan. From the information obtained from the inheritance, it was known that the demon clan was strong a long time ago. At that time, humans were far from the prosperous state they were in now. In the world, there were quite a lot of birds and beasts. Moreover, many of them were born very strong and were blessed by nature. They knew how to cultivate, absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, and absorb the essence of the sun and moon, embarking on the path of cultivation to become a demon. At that time, it could be said that powerhouses were as common as cloud. Humans. Back then, they were just food in the mouth of the demon clan. They were like ants. Among the monster race, there were many powerful races that had given birth to many powerful warriors. In order to ensure that their descendants could prosper forever, these warriors had researched the inconceivable secret method of bloodline inheritance. They applied this secret method to their own clansmen. It didn't have any effect on them, but it had miraculous effects on their descendant. For example, a descendant of the Snake clan suddenly had spirituality, and knew how to absorb the essence of the sun and moon and the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Slowly, demon power would appear in the body. With demon power, if there was a coincidence, it would activate the inheritance that existed from ancient times in the bloodline. From the bloodline inheritance, they would obtain a mysterious secret method, or a powerful cultivation method. Of course, it was also possible that they would only obtain some insignificant inheritance, because bloodline inheritance was the integration of all the knowledge of the ancestors into the bloodline. What kind of inheritance could be activated completely depended on one's luck. Maybe if one was lucky, one could obtain a powerful ancient cultivation method. If one was unlucky, one could obtain some insignificant things. Inheritances were also very random. Bloodline inheritance may have been common thousands of years ago, but in the present day, the bloodline of the powerhouse who performed the bloodline inheritance had become very thin in each generation. Whether or not it could be activated depended on one's luck. Moreover, every demon clan member could only activate it once in their lifetime. This time, it was also because of Sakra's great luck. After consuming the spirit-gathering pill, he first strengthened the demonic energy in his body. Then, there was the sudden mutation of the mysterious power in the rock, which stimulated the bloodline inheritance that was originally impossible to appear. After silently absorbing this precious knowledge for an unknown amount of time, Di Shirtion gently opened his eyes and looked at the stars in the distance. Tiger Roar Technique. I finally have a suitable cultivation method. Although it can only be cultivated to the core formation stage, it is enough. However, for the current me, it's enough. For the past few days, he had been thinking about this problem. How could he find a suitable cultivation method for him? But that was just a thought. After all, with his status, that was just wishful thinking. It was something that was impossible. It was as if he really did have some kind of luck. It was as if the heavens knew what he was thinking. Just as he was about to doze off, a pillow came to his door. Although the Tiger Roar Technique was not a very profound cultivation method, it contained the ability to let creatures with spiritual intelligence have the potential to become demons. Starting from the lowest level, forming an inner core and becoming a demon beast, all of these were contained in this technique. Overall, perhaps the Tiger Roar Technique was not a very profound cultivation method, but it was the most suitable one for him. Carefully recalling the cultivation method in his mind, Di Shirtion was very satisfied. The Tiger Roar Technique had a total of 9 levels. The first to third levels were suitable for his current situation. It was to absorb the spiritual chi of heaven and earth, as well as the essence of the sun and moon, and slowly strengthen the demon power in his body. At this time, the demon power was similar to the chi refining stage of cultivators. It was to cultivate chi. Entering the 4th level from the 3rd level was a hurdle. If he broke through, the demon power in his body would undergo a transformation from a gaseous state to a liquid state. At this time, the demon power would be even purer. At this time, creatures that reached this state could be called demon beasts. Some wonderful abilities would be awakened in their bodies. From the 6th level to the 7th level was another hurdle. If he passed it, he could compress and condense the demon power in his body to form a Niden. Only when the Niden was formed could he be qualified to become a demon. One could imagine how important the Niden was to a demon. It was the result of the fusion of essence, chi, and spirit. It was closely related to one's life. If I had this Tiger Roar Technique, I don't know how long I would have to wait to truly become a demon. Orthodox demon cultivation is indeed magical. Di Shirtion carefully looked at the cultivation method in his mind. The inheritance this time was not only a cultivation method, but also some things to pay attention to in demon cultivation. With this look, he was greatly amazed. Demon cultivation really had a unique set of cultivation method. Because demons were formed from the birds and beasts of heaven and earth, the structure of their bodies was originally different from that of human beings. For example, human beings had the 12 main meridians, 8 extraordinary meridians, and 3 major dantians. It was impossible to have all of these. Therefore, the cultivation method of the demon race was definitely different from that of human cultivators. In terms of cultivation, demons walked before humans. Naturally, there were unique cultivation methods among demons. Orthodox demon cultivation was definitely not inferior to human cultivators in terms of rigor. If Tion had not opened the bloodline inheritance, he would never have known about this. Chapter 10. There is an ancient saying, "The human body is a huge treasure. As long as you find the key to it, you can obtain unimaginable power. Heaven and earth are the big universe and the human body is the small universe." This saying undoubtedly shows that the human body is indeed the most suitable body for cultivation in the world. Not only does the body contain the 5 elements, the meridians and acupoints in the human body are also very mysterious. They can respond to the sun, moon, and stars in the sky. They have a unique gift for sensing and absorbing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. The most mysterious thing is the 3 acupoints in the human body, the upper, middle, and lower dantian. The existence of a dantian means that one can store essence, qi, and spirit. Therefore, among Xiaxianists there is a dantian zifu. This dantian zifu is used to store true yuan and provide a place for jindan and yuanying to live. Only with this can one be called a foundation. Only with a zifu can one be considered to have built a foundation for immortality. Thinking of how lucky it is for humans to be born with a dantian, it is not wrong to say that they have been blessed by the heavens. Zifu, zifu. The word zifu means a place to live. Jindan is a fetus and yuanying is a baby. Without a place to live, they naturally won't exist. It can be imagined that the importance of a zifu is absolutely extraordinary. The complexity of the meridians in the bodies of animals is far less than that of humans. For example, a snake directly has a meridian running all the way down. However, animals still have a dantian. For example, the vital point of a snake's dantian is its 7 inches. Once the vital point is grabbed, no matter how fierce the snake is, it will instantly go limp and collapse. Of course, there are also some animals that don't have a dantian. For example, plants and trees have meridians. But speaking of a dantian, who can find a dantian in a tree? Regardless of whether they are animals or plants, they can all cultivate into monsters. Why is this? In ancient times, after countless experts of the monster race gathered together to study together, they finally came up with a set of Xiuyao methods that are suitable for all species in the world. Regardless of whether you have a dantian or not and where your dantian is, Zioists don't care about these at all. They directly open up a monster mansion in their bodies. After absorbing the information in his mind, Tian can't help but admire them. Those Zioists of the previous generation were definitely gifted geniuses. The mysteries of Xiuyao are definitely not inferior to that of Xiuxian. Just from the fact that the previous generation of monsters could come up with a way to open up a monster mansion in their bodies, he can't help but be deeply impressed. Establishing a Fey abode was equivalent to having a Fey foundation. After sorting out the huge amount of information in his mind for the time being, Sakra lowered his head to look at the boulder below him. The look in his eyes was very complicated. If he didn't experience it himself, he wouldn't believe that such an ordinary-looking boulder would be a magical treasure. If he remembered correctly, this rock had already helped him a few times. First, it allowed him to absorb the essence of the sun and moon, forming demonic qi in his body. Then, when he took the spirit pill, it released a mysterious force to protect his meridians and body from harm. No matter how stupid he was, he could guess that this rock was a hidden treasure. Perhaps there was some kind of spiritual item hidden in the boulder. Otherwise, there wouldn't be such a miraculous effect. Tian had a complicated look in his eyes. Although he knew that the item in front of him was a rare treasure, he didn't have the ability to take it. He didn't think that with his current ability, he could break this solid boulder that had existed for who knows how many years. Forget it, what's mine can't run away. Now that I've successfully awakened my bloodline inheritance and know the cultivation method of the Fae clan, the only thing I can do now is to start cultivating as soon as possible. Cultivate the roaring tiger technique to the 3rd layer, then open up a Fae abode and become a true Fae. At that time, I'll have the ability to protect myself, he muttered to himself in his heart. Looking at the sky, he saw that the moon was gradually fading away. In the east, there were traces of light slowly blooming, slowly breaking free from the shackles of darkness. Awoo! Without lingering any longer, he turned around and jumped off the boulder, walking down the mountain. He had gained enough benefits from this night. With the roaring tiger technique, he had a direction to cultivate. Compared to those who had spirituality, but could only silently absorb the power of the heavens and earth, spending hundreds or even thousands of years to accumulate, he was lucky enough. As long as he cultivated the technique to the 3rd layer, he would be able to cultivate the only offensive technique in the technique. Roaring Tiger. For a long time, the roar of the Tiger clan was an extremely domineering deterrent to other beasts. When people heard it, they would unconsciously tremble in fear. It was an invisible deterrent. If he cultivated it, he would be able to transform the tiger's roar into a type of sound wave technique, truly possessing a powerful killing power. According to the records in the technique, Tirtian was looking forward to this technique. As he walked towards the cave, his mind was constantly thinking, in the roaring tiger technique, the first 3 layers are the process of accumulating demonic energy. As long as I continuously absorb the essence of the sun and moon, or by refining blood, I can strengthen it. Moreover, where do I have the spirit gathering pill? I only took one today, and the demonic energy in my body reached the 2nd layer. As long as I go back and cultivate the roaring tiger technique a few times, I can easily advance to the 2nd layer. He had personally experienced the powerful medicinal power of the spirit gathering pill. There were still dozens of them in the jade bottle. With just a few, Tirtian was confident that he could smoothly break through to the 3rd layer. Then, he would open up the demon palace, and advance from an ordinary beast to a demon beast would be smooth sailing. On the way back to the cave, he killed an adult wild boar in the forest. After drinking the wild boar's hot blood, he dragged the wild boar back to the cave. Now Tirtian had mutated. He had become abnormally tall, and had already surpassed the size of an adult tiger. The length of his head and tail had reached 3 meters, and his height was also more than 1 meter. His body was majestic, and at a glance, it could steal the hearts and souls of people. Under the stimulation of demonic energy, he could clearly feel that his body was becoming stronger every day. As a matter of fact, his fur had become smoother, and his muscles were incomparably firm. He could faintly feel that the strength of his body should be at least twice as strong as that of an adult tiger. Ordinary attacks were unable to harm him. Take the wild boar just now, for example. When he was hit from the side, he only felt a slight pain. Other than that, his body did not even move. With a wave of his claws, he tore off a large piece of flesh from the thick fur of the wild boar. At that moment, he knew that the current him definitely had the ability to live up to the title of King of Beasts on his head. In the forest, animals that could pose a threat to him were already quite rare. After returning to the cave, he ate and drank to his heart's content and lay down in the cave. First, he silently recalled the cultivation method, and then began to cultivate the tiger roar technique for the first time. With the circulation of the tiger roar technique, the demonic energy that was previously not flexible in his body began to circulate rapidly under the driving of the cultivation method. With every circulation, Tirtian could clearly feel that the energy in his body was constantly transforming into the demonic energy unique to the tiger roar technique. When he commanded it, It was as easy as waving his arm. The powerful feeling of controlling the demonic energy made him look forward to his future cultivation. The tiger roar technique was a cultivation method that was built according to the body shape of the tiger tribe. The circulation of the demonic energy was according to the unique meridians in the tiger's body. For example, the first layer was to open up the meridians from the head to the tail, so that the demonic energy in the body could circulate smoothly in these meridians. This was like a small cycle of the human body. In this way, one could rely on these meridians to begin absorbing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth outside the body. The second layer was to open up the meridians in the two front legs, so that the demonic energy could circulate in the two front legs, increasing the number of meridians that could absorb spiritual energy. With the increase of the meridians, naturally, with every circulation, the amount of spiritual energy that could be absorbed, and even the demonic energy that was born in the body would be greatly improved and strengthened. The speed of absorbing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth would also greatly increase. The last layer was to open up the two hind legs, connecting all the meridians in the body. The speed of absorbing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth would increase again. At this time, one could begin to prepare to open up the demonic mansion and break through to the fourth layer. Every day, Tion would first hunt during the day, then return to the cave and silently make use of every moment to transform the demonic energy in his body. At night, he would run to the large boulder and absorb the essence of the sun and moon. Although with the help of the cultivation method, he no longer needed to rely on the large boulder to absorb the essence of the sun and moon. But he also discovered one thing. Cultivating on the large boulder, compared to cultivating in other places, the speed of absorbing the essence of the sun and moon was simply several times faster. It was extremely suitable for cultivation. The world was slowly moving forward in this orderly life. Because Tion caused too much of a commotion when he opened the bloodline inheritance, at this time, many people from all over the country of Chu had already arrived at the foot of the Tiger Hill mountain range after receiving the news. The small mountain villages changed from their usual desolation and became lively. Many people who arrived all stayed in the mountain villages. There were no less than a few hundred people who came. Without exception, all of them were carrying all kinds of weapons that shone with cold light. The murderous aura on their bodies was either thin or thick. In this world, immortal cultivators stood at the peak of existence. Generally, they were not known to others. Only a few people had actually seen them. Jiya! In a small mountain village called the Yun family village, there was a clear sound of the door opening from a rather tall and luxurious wooden house in the mountain village. Then came the sound of footsteps. Big Brother Qin, this time it was not easy for me to persuade Father to allow me to leave the palace. Why did we stop here when we are already at the Tiger Hill mountain range? Along with the sound of footsteps, a clear and melodious voice of a young girl was first heard. Yes, there is a strange light in the Tiger Hill mountain range. Everyone within 100 miles has seen it with their own eyes. According to the usual practice, this kind of strange light usually represents a sign that some kind of strange treasure is about to be unearthed. The third princess has a rare spiritual root potential. After this year's birthday, she will be taken in by the Lianyun sect. If the strange treasure is found, it may be very beneficial for the princess's cultivation. At this time, another pleasant female voice was heard. Listening to the voice, there was a hint of envy in it. Today's second chapter may not be available. If it is too late, then I owe everyone a chapter. 3,000 words, I will find time to make it up. Chapter 11. While they were talking, a group of people finally came out. The person at the front was a young girl who was at most 16 years old. Her skin was like jade, and she was wearing an incomparably precious dress that perfectly accentuated her exquisite figure. Although she was young, her development was indeed quite good. She was curvy in all the right places and she looked petite, but she gave people a kind of unique beauty. In particular, her body naturally exuded an innate noble temperament. When all these qualities were mixed together, it gave people a unique charm. It was not the slightest bit inferior to those mature women. She had a country-toppling appearance. If one looked carefully, one could see that there was a hint of slyness in her eyes, which showed that this girl was definitely not a virtuous woman. She had an unconventional temperament. There were two men beside her. The one on the left was holding a folding fan. He was a young man with an elegant demeanor. He was half a step behind her, and there was always a faint smile on his handsome face. He gave off an amiable aura, and people couldn't help but feel close to him. His gorgeous blue brocade clothes were obviously not something that ordinary people could wear. The one on the right was about 18 or 19 years old. A sword with two strange gems on the scabbard was hanging on his waist. Unlike the man on the left, this young man did not show much joy or anger on his face. Vaguely, there was a trace of fierce aura on his body. When he looked at the girl, there was a trace of undisguised heat in his eyes. Then, there was a girl who was dressed as a maid. She was not old, only about 18 years old. Different from ordinary maids, she was holding a simple long sword in her hand. Following behind them, there was only a slight sound under her feet. Her eyes never left the girl in front of her. From the conversation earlier, it could be deduced that the young lady walking in front should be a princess of Chu, and one of the two men must have the surname of Qin. The last sentence that was filled with envy should have been uttered by the maid behind them. Princess Chu Yun. The young man on the right, who had a sharp aura around him, said calmly, "The Tiger Hill mountain range extends for more than 10,000 miles. The entire area is shrouded in a dense forest. There are all kinds of ferocious beasts and poisonous creatures living in the mountain range. I have already asked the experienced hunters in the village about it." "Oh, what did the hunters say?" Princess Chu Yun's eyes lit up as she hurriedly asked. "Qin Hai, you don't have to keep us in suspense anymore. If you find out anything, just say it directly. A mere Tiger Hill mountain range shouldn't be a problem for us." The gentle-looking young man smiled and waved his folding fan elegantly a few times. Qin Hai glanced at him with a strange look in his eyes. "Zheng Baichuan, although you're also a disciple of the Lianyan sect, you're only at the 4th layer of qi refining. You're not much stronger than the experts of the Jianghu in the secular world. There are some places that you can't enter as you please. It will be too late for regret." When Zheng Baichuan heard this, his expression changed slightly, and he closed his fan with a snap. However, he did not immediately refute. According to the hunters, there are a large number of birds and beasts in the Tiger Hill mountain range. Many of them are in groups. Once a stranger enters, most of them will attack the person. Just at the edge of the mountain range alone, several people die in the mountain range every year. Therefore, very few people dare to walk into the mountain range. It's said that some people have seen fierce tigers and a large group of wolves in the mountain range. Qin Hai did not pay too much attention to Zheng Baichuan and began to talk about what he had heard. "There are tigers?" When Princess Chu Yun heard the name of the king of beasts, she was not afraid. Instead, her eyes flashed with a sly light, and her face was full of interest. It seemed that she was definitely not a well-behaved person. "There are wolves?" Zheng Baichuan's expression changed immediately. Obviously, he was more concerned about this matter. One had to know that the scariest thing in the forest was being targeted by a pack of wolves. As everyone knew, wolves were social animals. They often appeared in groups. It was possible for there to be hundreds or even thousands of wolves at a time. One wolf might not be scary, but if there were a pack of wolves, even a tiger would have to retreat temporarily. Once there was a swarm of wolves, no matter how powerful they would have to face the awkward situation of two fists being outnumbered. Even if they were strong, As long as they had not entered a profound realm and become an immortal cultivator, they would have to consider carefully when facing a pack of wolves. In the cultivation realm, there were low to high levels: chi refinement, foundation establishment, core formation. Let's not talk about the later levels for now. Chi refinement alone was the meaning of refining energy into chi. It was divided into 12 levels, and the cultivation was spiritual power. If one did not have a corresponding spiritual root in their body, they would not be able to cultivate the cultivation methods in the chi refinement stage. This was because even if they were given the cultivation methods, they would not be able to enter the door. The reason was very simple. People in the martial arts world cultivated true chi. As long as one had a little talent in martial arts, they could achieve some success. The only difference was the size of the achievement. It was a cultivation method that continuously developed the potential of the human body. It did not require too many factors. Cultivators, on the other hand, relied on the spiritual root in their body to absorb the spiritual chi of heaven and earth. Therefore, they cultivated spiritual power, which was completely different from true chi. People without spiritual roots could not feel the spiritual chi of heaven and earth outside their body. Naturally, they could not absorb it and could not embark on the path of immortal cultivation. As one could imagine, immortal cultivation was not a simple matter. The innate conditions one possessed were very important. There were good spiritual roots and bad ones. A good spiritual root would obviously absorb the spiritual chi of heaven and earth much faster than a poor one. Perhaps a person with a poor spiritual root would only need to cultivate for a month, while a person with a supreme spiritual root would only need to cultivate for a day or half a day. The difference was immeasurable. In fact, in the chi refinement stage, especially in the early stage, the strength of people in the chi refinement stage was about the same as the people in the Jianghu. For example, Zheng Baichuan was now in the 4th stage of chi refinement. His true strength was in the realm of the top masters in the Jianghu. He did not have the inhuman strength of immortal cultivators. If he really encountered a pack of wolves, if he was not careful, he would still be buried in their mouths. Princess, since Tiger Hill mountain range is so dangerous, why don't we just not go in? Let's play somewhere else and then return to the palace. The maid holding the sword also changed her expression and advised. No! Princess Chu Yun refused without hesitation. It's not easy for us to leave the palace. I don't want to go back empty-handed. Didn't they say there were tigers in the mountain? This time, I have to catch a tiger and bring it back as a gift for father. She was now interested in tigers. How could she be willing to go back so easily? Actually, you don't have to worry too much. Tiger Hill mountain range might really be dangerous. However, this time, we brought 300 experienced soldiers from the Grey Wolf Army. Every one of them was personally trained by my father. They are iron-blooded soldiers who crawled out from the dead. Later, we will prepare to enter the forest. Even if there is any danger, there is no need to be afraid. When Qin Hai mentioned the Grey Wolf Army, his eyes revealed a deep sense of confidence and pride. It was as if this army could give people endless confidence. Princess Chu Yun heard this and was overjoyed. She said, "Then I will leave everything to Brother Qin. Anyway, Brother Qin also has spiritual root. When the Lianyun sect's ancestor comes, I will ask him to take Brother Qin into the sect as well." As a member of the royal family, even though Princess Chu Yun was still young, she still knew many tricks. She promised a benefit as soon as she opened her mouth. When Qin Hai heard this, his eyes lit up. However, he immediately restrained himself and said respectfully, "Thank you, Princess, for your help. Even if I enter the Lianyun sect, I will still be the princess's guardian." However, he thought to himself, "It doesn't matter if I can cultivate or not. What's important is that I can stay by your side and see you every day." After the discussion, the group began to prepare various things for entering the mountain. There were many things that needed to be prepared. After entering the mountain, no one knew how long they would stay. Therefore, tents were necessary. In addition, water, food, and other necessities could not be lacking. At this moment, Tion did not know that an abnormal danger was about to attack him. Looking at the cave, a tall black tiger was lying on a wide brown fur. Every strand of fur on its body was extremely smooth. The purple king word on its forehead gave it an even more intimidating aura. A layer of faint black gas emerged from the black tiger's body. The black tiger's body seemed to have a magical suction force. The surrounding spiritual energy of heaven and earth was quickly sucked into its body. The black gas outside its body was the demonic aura that Tion had just obtained. Although it was very faint, it meant that he had begun to cultivate. The demonic aura in his body would always follow him. As his cultivation level increased, the demonic aura would become stronger. Tian's mind had already entered his body at this moment. He secretly operated the Tiger Roar technique. Waves of black demonic aura were quickly flowing along the meridians in his body. At this moment, the meridians in his body from his head to his tail had already been opened. Even the meridians in his two front legs were connected. The demonic aura circulated in his meridians. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth from outside entered his body and immediately merged with the demonic aura along his meridians, causing the demonic aura to constantly grow. After a series of changes, the meridians in his body had become quite thick. The demonic aura circulated in his meridians. It could be seen that the demonic aura was only half as thick as his meridians. It could only circulate in his body and his front legs. It did not go through his back legs and connect his meridians to his whole body. Ow! After an unknown period of time, Tion opened his eyes and let out a deep roar. His eyes were full of humanity. However, there was always a touch of indelible coldness in his eyes. Swish! Tion quickly stood up. His two hind legs kicked hard on the ground. His body leaped into the air and ran out of the cave. He left the cave and ran to a big tree on the left side of the cave. It was as thick as an adult's thigh. He jumped up with all his strength and stretched out his right front paw to grab the tree. Chapter 12. Bang! Just as the tiger claw was about to hit the tree trunk, a layer of faint black gas suddenly appeared and covered the tiger claw. When the tiger claw hit the tree trunk, there was a loud boom and the thigh-thick tree trunk was split in half by the tiger claw. Crash! The 7 to 8 meter tall tree fell heavily to the ground just like that. This claw was really clean and sharp. Tion couldn't help but secretly nod. Just now, he was experimenting with the results of cultivating the Tiger Roar technique. Because the meridians of the two front legs were opened, the demonic power could be poured into the two front claws. When the tiger claw was about to hit the tree, the demonic power that appeared on the tiger claw was because he poured demonic power into the tiger claw. With the infusion of demonic power, coupled with his strong physical body, he could clearly feel that the tiger claw contained a powerful force that could tear everything apart. When the sharp tiger claw landed on the tree, it was as if it had landed on a piece of tofu. It easily tore the tree into two. Looking at the broken tree, Sakra's eyes flashed as he thought to himself, with the demonic power, I'm indeed powerful. When I'm operating my technique, the demonic power is also constantly strengthening my body. Now, just the strength of my body alone is more than twice as powerful as White Tiger Mother. If it's combined with the demonic power, I'm simply invincible. Demon cultivation is definitely not inferior to immortal cultivation. He could clearly feel the powerful force hidden in his body. From some simple understanding of immortal cultivation in his previous life, he could roughly guess that the focus should be on the cultivation of Jindan and Yuanying. There was not much attention on the physical body and would not consciously strengthen one's body. Demon cultivation was different. The tiger roar technique not only cultivated demonic power, but also during the cultivation process, let the demonic power continue to temper one's body, making the body stronger. Often, the higher the cultivation, the stronger the body, and it would also continue to grow bigger. This point could be seen from his own body. While the tiger roar technique was increasing his demonic power, he could also clearly feel that his body was slowly growing bigger. He had a premonition that if he broke through to the third layer, his demonic power would run through his entire body. His body would undergo a considerable change, and it might become even bigger. In short, demonic cultivation might not necessarily be inferior to immortal cultivation. In fact, in a certain aspect, he was even stronger. When he thought of that, Di Shirtian's desire to quickly become a Yao grew even stronger. Breaking through to the third level is not difficult. I only need to consume a few spirit-gathering pills to allow me to smoothly break through. You can give me a miraculous pill like the spirit-gathering pill so casually. What kind of secret is hidden in that treasure box? Thinking of the spirit-gathering pill, the mysterious treasure box appeared in his mind again. The treasure box was definitely not an ordinary treasure. Standing outside the cave, he pondered for a moment. When he raised his head again, his gaze had become rather resolute. He took a step forward and quickly rushed into the cave. Complete the jigsaw puzzle and open the treasure box. Almost at this moment, Di Shirtian made up his mind. Although the treasure box did not belong to him, the mysterious woman had given it to him for safekeeping. It was definitely a way to divert her attention. For this reason, she had also used some strange magic on him. Moreover, she had said that she would come and take it, but she had not yet come. Open the treasure box and see what is inside? As soon as this thought appeared, it took root in his heart. Returning to the cave, he went to the deepest part of the cave and lifted the bearskin that covered the ground. Traces of new soil were immediately exposed. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Extending his tiger claws, he quickly dug up the soil on the ground. Because the soil was newly dug up, it was much easier to dig up compared to before. In a moment, all the soil was dug up. Looking down, there was a deep pit that was neither too big nor too small. Astonishingly, there was a simple and unadorned green treasure box and a jade bottle made of jade in it. Taking the treasure box out of the pit, he did not use the soil to bury it. Instead, he only covered the bearskin on the ground. Then, lying on the bearskin, he placed the treasure box in front of him. After carefully sizing up the treasure box once again and not finding anything special, Di Shirtian suddenly waved a tiger claw that was covered in black demonic aura and fiercely attacked the treasure box. The tiger claw faintly emitted a black metallic luster. The cold light was threatening and incomparably sharp. Bang! For this claw, Di Shirtian could be said to have poured all the demonic aura in his body into it. It was definitely the strongest attack he could make now. When it landed on the treasure box, it unsurprisingly produced a series of rumbling sounds. At this time, a terrifying force was released from the treasure box without warning and directly bombarded his body. Bang! This force had unlimited potential. In an instant, it forcefully bounced Di Shirtian a few meters away and smashed into the stone wall of the cave. Landing on the ground, it made a muffled sound. This time, if Di Shirtian's current physical body was several times stronger than before, he would definitely have broken a few bones in his body. What a tyrannical treasure box! This is completely the force that I bombarded the box with just now. It can actually reflect all the force back to me without missing a single bit. Di Shirtian was shocked. The moment he came into contact with the force that was reflected by the treasure box, he already knew that it was the force that he had bombarded the treasure box with just now. In other words, he had completely withstood the force of his attack just now. In his shock, he was even more convinced of the magic of the treasure box. I didn't expect that the box alone would have such a magical power. No wonder the person who made the treasure box didn't set up any restrictions, but only set up a puzzle mechanism on the box. Tion pondered and said, "It seems that the puzzle on the box is the only way to open the treasure box." After confirming this, he extended his tiger claw towards the treasure box again. Of course, this time, he did not attack the treasure box again. Instead, he used one of his sharp claws to place on one of the blank grids in the jigsaw puzzle. He inserted his claws into the gap between the grids and pulled with all his might. "Pata!" A crisp sound rang out, and just as he had expected, the blank piece of the map was easily picked up. Once this piece of the puzzle was pulled out, the thousands of puzzle pieces that were originally embedded in the treasure box that did not have any space to move finally had space to move. The so-called jigsaw puzzle was a game that tested a person's intelligence, eyesight, memory, and even patience. However, those games only required a few dozen pieces at most. Hundreds of pieces were basically the limit. At that time, if one did not have a genius level of intelligence, sharp eyesight, and strong patience, it was absolutely impossible to completely complete the jigsaw puzzle. Now, the treasure box was divided into thousands of pieces. If one wanted to complete the jigsaw puzzle, it would be a huge project. Knowing this situation, Tion was not depressed. Instead, a strong sense of challenge rose in his heart. In his previous life, he was a genius. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to accumulate such a huge amount of wealth in such a short period of time. His high intelligence was definitely not to be trifled with. Therefore, there was no problem with his intelligence and memory. As for his eyesight, after practicing the roaring tiger technique, he could acutely feel that his eyesight was getting better and better. When he stood in one place, he could see things very far away very clearly. Naturally, this was even more of a problem. As for patience and time, if it was in his previous life, he might have lacked it. But now, he was already a tiger. Other than going out to hunt for food, he would be cultivating. He had as much time as he wanted. In every aspect, he had the qualifications and conditions to complete this huge jigsaw puzzle. Voila! He used his tiger claw to gently move the puzzle piece on the treasure box. As expected, the puzzle piece moved to the blank piece. It could indeed move. Without a doubt, the puzzle piece in front of him was a mechanism. After confirming this, Sakura didn't start immediately. Instead, he opened his pair of tiger eyes and stared motionlessly at these thousands of tiles. In his heart, he had already begun to silently copy the patterns on these tiles piece by piece into his mind. He had to first memorize all the puzzle pieces. Then, he would use mental arithmetic in his mind to find the similarities and connections between the puzzle pieces. This was one of the tricks in jigsaw puzzles. Find the similarities on the edges and then put them together. This way, the rest of the puzzle would be easier. He quietly stared at the puzzle pieces for a full hour. Then, Tion completely closed his eyes. He no longer looked at the treasure box. He silently put the puzzle pieces together in his mind, again and again, to see if he could put them together. This was a huge project. Sakura didn't dare to guarantee how long it would take for him to complete the jigsaw puzzle. This might take 10 days or even 1 month or 2 months. As for how long it would take, he did not know. When the sun began to set, Tion finally opened his eyes. He fiddled with the puzzle pieces on the treasure box for a while. He only managed to put together a dozen pieces that were related to each other. After he was done, he placed the blank piece back on the treasure box. Then, he placed the treasure box into the deep hole and buried it with soil. Then, he left the cave. It was time to hunt. When it came to puzzles, he knew how difficult it was, so he didn't force it. Piecing together a few pieces at a time, the progress might be slow at the beginning, but later on, as long as he pieced together some rough shapes, his speed would slowly increase. This was not something that could be done in a day or two. "Awoo! Outside the cave, in the southeast of the mountain range, a wave of desolate wolf howls rose and fell, one after another, continuously ringing out. "It's a pack of wolves?" De Chertien's pupils contracted violently. Judging from the howls, there was definitely a large number of wolves howling. The simultaneous howls meant that there was a pack of wolves hunting. Chapter 13. As the saying goes, a wolf was not scary, but a pack of wolves was scary. There was another saying, a fierce tiger cannot defeat a pack of wolves. That was the truth. No animal would want to encounter a pack of wolves in the jungle. If it was in the past, De Chertien would temporarily avoid them when he heard that it was a pack of wolves. He did not think that he could defeat hundreds or thousands of wolves. If there was a wolf king among them, the pack of wolves would be even more terrifying. Because the wolf king must have wisdom and spirituality that other wolves did not have. Under the command of the wolf king, the pack of wolves would be more aggressive. The wolf howls are bleak and continuous. It seems that the target of the pack of wolves is not simple. It should not have been killed by the pack of wolves. Listening to the continuous howls of the wolves, Indra couldn't help but ponder, in the Tiger Hill mountain range, there shouldn't be many beasts that can match me. What kind of beast can block the attack of the wolf pack? As he said that, a burst of curiosity rose in his heart. His original plan of looking for prey in other directions was immediately abandoned. He turned around and rushed to the southeast where the pack of wolves appeared. If it was in the past, Sakra wouldn't join in the fun. The wolf pack was too scary. If he rashly went over, he might be swallowed by the pack of wolves. But now it was different. His powerful body was even stronger than an adult tiger. His solid fur couldn't be scratched by the claws and teeth of ordinary animals. Coupled with the demon power in his body, he was confident that in this mountain forest, no animal could keep him. He was curious about the target of the pack of wolves. He did not suppress this psychology and obediently rushed to the southeast. Although his body had become bigger than before, his speed did not slow down at all. Instead, it became more and more rapid. Under the afterglow of the setting sun, he quickly shuttled through the dense jungle. Along the way, he did not release the aura of the king of beasts. Instead, he used the tiger roar skill to restrain his aura. Running at full speed all the way, his figure could not be seen at all. Only a black shadow could be vaguely seen flashing. It was obvious that his speed was extremely fast. With the howls of the wolves guiding the way, it didn't take long for De Chertien to arrive near the pack of wolves. He hid his body in a pile of weeds that was as tall as a person, and his two bright eyes peered out. His heart was immediately replaced by a kind of surprise. Someone has entered the Tiger Hill mountain range, and they are all carrying swords and sabers. Following his gaze, there was a slightly wider area not far away. There were relatively fewer trees, and a few tents were set up on the ground. In front of the tents there were a few bonfires with flames half the height of a person. The flames were bright red, and it lit up the surroundings. Beside the bonfires, there were dozens of people vigilantly holding torches. Clenching their weapons tightly, they looked at the dense pack of wolves around them with a horrified expression on their faces. These aren't ordinary hunters. They look like the ancient Jianghu people I heard about in my previous life. Why would these people suddenly come to Tiger Hill mountain range? De Chertien was secretly puzzled. This group of people brought tents and held sharp swords and sabers. Every one of them carried a trace of murderous aura. It was obvious that they were definitely not ordinary people. Different from the cultivators he had seen before, these people's bodies were not flowing with spiritual power or vital essence, but a kind of power that he was not familiar with. He felt it for a while, and it seemed to be the genuine chi of martial arts in the secular world. He vaguely guessed that these people might be Wulin masters in the secular world. Looking at the pack of wolves that surrounded the campsite of the Jianghu people, it was even more frightening. There were thousands of wolves, and each of them was tall and strong. When they opened their mouths, sharp wolf fangs were shining with cold light. They stared at the strangers in the middle, drooling drop by drop. In the pairs of shining green eyes, there was a bloodthirsty light. Wolves, this is the pack of wolves in Tiger Hill mountain range. This time we are in trouble. A middle-aged man in the middle looked at the dense pack of wolves with a wry smile. There was fear in his eyes. Gang leader, there are too many of these wolves. I'm afraid there are at least 1,000 or 2,000 of them. If they were not afraid of the fire, they would have already pounced on us. What should we do? A big man with a scar on his face was standing beside the middle-aged man. He was holding a thick saber tightly. He swallowed his saliva and spoke with some despair. It was obvious that this middle-aged man was the gang leader he spoke of. This group of people was originally a medium-sized gang in Jianghu called the Big Saber Gang. As the name implied, most of the gang members used sabers. There were more than 1,000 people in the gang. The gang's address was in a town near Tiger Hill mountain range. This time, they heard that there was a strange light in Tiger Hill mountain range. It was a sign that a treasure was about to appear. Unable to restrain the greed and curiosity in his heart, gang leader Mao Yidao heard that many Wulin people had begun to head to Tiger Hill mountain range. He could not help but lead the left and right guardians, as well as a group of elite disciples, to the mountain range. With the idea of being the first to get it, Mao Yidao led his people and charged into the mountain range after making some preparations. Although there were wild beasts roaming around the edge of the mountain range, there were not many of them. They heard that the strange light was in the innermost part of the mountain range. Along the way they encountered mountains and rivers. When they arrived here with great difficulty and saw that the sky was gradually darkening, they found a spacious place to set up their tents and rest. Who would have thought that a pack of vicious wolves would suddenly appear? They surrounded the camp with 3 layers inside and 3 layers outside. If it were not for the burning fires, the pack of wolves would have already pounced on them. Damn it, I might have to die here today. Daoba, immediately lead the brothers to form a saber formation. The torches won't last long. These damn wolves will definitely rush over. As a gang leader, Mao Yidao was also a ruthless person. Seeing that there was no way out, the muscles on his face twitched and he shouted orders to Daoba, who was beside him. Yes, gang leader. I, Daoba, don't believe that these unintelligent wolves will be able to keep us here. Daoba shouted loudly as if he could boost his courage. He walked to the back and waved his saber at the dozens of men who were dressed in martial arts attire. Those who were able to come here were all elite disciples of the Big Saber Gang. All of them had killed their way out. They understood the situation they were in and all of them showed signs of facing death calmly. 3 people. The 3 of them grouped together and formed the most common tripartite formation. The thick sabers in their hands flickered with a cold light. They raised the power in their bodies to the limit. Fu Shan, your throwing saber is the best in the gang. There are so many wolves, so there must be a wolf king among them. Follow me. Once you find the wolf king, immediately use your throwing saber to end it. Once the wolf king is dead, the pack of wolves will have no leader and will retreat. Whether or not we can get out of danger this time will all depend on you. At this time, Mao Yidao spoke to a man with a sharp gaze behind him. That man didn't have a saber in his hand like the others. Instead, he was playing with a 3-inch-long throwing saber in his right hand. Although the throwing saber was small, it had a sharp edge. His slender hands were well maintained and white like a woman's hands. This was a pair of hands that were born to play with sabers. Don't worry, gang leader. As long as the Wolf King appears, I can guarantee that the throwing saber in my hand will immediately pierce its neck. Fu Shan's tone was filled with deep confidence. Awoo! At this time, a wolf howl filled with pride came from the pack of wolves. This howl was different from other wolf howls. It was extremely penetrating, and the aura of the howl was like that of a proud and aloof king. Awoo! The pack of wolves responded, and the green light in their eyes became even more intense. It was as if they had received some kind of signal from the howl just now. One by one, the tall wild wolves moved at the same time. They completely ignored the torches in front of the campsite and fiercely pounced on the people. With ferocious faces, terrifying fangs, and sharp claws, the pack of wolves began to attack with a ferocious aura. Kill! With a loud roar, the people of the Big Saber Gang also moved. Their bodies exploded with a strong murderous aura. Their large sabers shone with a cold light. Every 3 people formed a tripartite formation. They waved their sabers and didn't give in at all to the pack of wolves. The pack of wolves rushed forward without regard for their own safety and launched a sharp attack on the people of the Big Saber Gang. Even if they were cut by the large sabers, their claws would fall on the opponent's body. They would either scratch a few bloody wounds or tear off a piece of flesh. The people of the Big Saber Gang who came here were the elites of the gang. Each of them had good strength. When the 3 of them worked together, they could take care of each other. However, there were too many wolves. Often, they would disregard their own safety and leave a wound on the body of the Big Saber Gang. It was difficult for 2 fists to fight against 4 hands. The fierce attacks made the Big Saber Gang fall into a disadvantage from the beginning. Gotcha! When a disciple was careless, a vicious wolf suddenly jumped out and opened its mouth to bite down on his throat. In an instant, that person's throat was bitten to pieces. Blood gushed out. The throat was one of the most vulnerable parts of the human body. Once bitten, it was obvious that the end result was obvious. Seeing blood, the pack of wolves became even crazier. Wolves really are the most aggressive species in the world. One wolf is not scary, but a pack of wolves is really scary. Tion hid in the weeds and silently watched the battle between the people and the beasts in front of him. There was a strange light flashing in his eyes. Just now, he also keenly discovered that there was definitely a wolf king in the pack of wolves, and the wolf king should be the one that first howled. Looking at the ferocious behavior of the wolf pack, Tion suddenly had an idea that he didn't originally have. Mother White Tiger and the others were captured by cultivators. In this world, cultivators are the most powerful. I'm afraid that the demon race is weak. Even if I cultivate to become a demon in the future, I alone will not be able to rescue them from the immortal cultivation sect. The light in his eyes became stronger and stronger. He looked at the wolf pack and said, "Any animal that can become the king of a race must have a spirituality that other wolves don't have. If I can subdue it, it will be a helper in the future." You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.